normally start over. It used to say recording in progress or recording started. Speakers aren't.
Yeah, I don't think these speakers out here are working.
Yeah, so
Problems.
there are some issues.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Gremlins.
Yeah, well,
I
as
know it's
Talbot
working.
said, we'll be what, 12 years old, I think he said,
Yeah,
January next year.
12 or 10?
No, I think we built this thing in what? Maybe it's 10 years ago. January 2012, I think. Yeah, I'll be 10 years old next year. 12 years, 10 years ago. So sounds like things are working a little. Got a couple of minutes, I think.
You let me know whenever you're ready.
Couple of minutes.
Talking about this or the meeting. Because I put me in the live.
Actually, no.
Well, I want to tell you, we are on Facebook and Zoom. So we may have to turn your microphone on.
Back on the supplement.
I was gonna say, see, we're not gonna take you off the supplement because you're sitting right there.
You're back on the supplement. All right. Almost time. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dawes County Board of Commissioners 2022 budget presentations. Welcome to those that are with us and those that are with us online as well. Today, we will start out with the juvenile court. And our juvenile court judge is here. She is asking for one new position, and that probably will be the primary reason that she is in front of you today. So go ahead.
Thank you. And again, I'm Lindsay Burton. I'm the Chief Juvenile Court Judge for our circuit, for those of you who I have not met. I just wanted to start and just go over just briefly the responsibilities of juvenile court for Dawson County. We deal with delinquency cases for any youth charged with a criminal offense that is charged under the age of 17. So anything from shoplifting all the way up to child molestation, some cases even more serious that start in Superior Court and are sent down to juvenile court. We also handle any traffic cases for any youth charged with a traffic offense under the age of 17. We handle a special class of case called children in need of services. These are offenses that only youth can be charged with. And these are cases for children under the age of 18. Offenses like ungovernable, offenses like runaway, and the most commonly charged one is truancy, kids not going to school. And then dependency. Dependency is one that probably takes the most time of juvenile court judges in both Hall and Dawson. These are abuse and neglect cases. The majority of these cases involve the Department of Family and Children Services and children that are placed in foster care. So that's the primary responsibilities of juvenile court. I know each department that you've seen has been impacted by COVID in different ways. I can tell you that when looking for our numbers in 20 and 21, we have not seen a significant decrease in any types of our cases. There was a slight decrease in our CHINS cases in 2020. That's based upon the lack of filings of truancy cases, simply because of attendance taking in schools just changed in 2020 when kids were sent home and went virtual. We've seen an increased use of our pro tem judge, and that's Judge Amanda Dean, who we've been blessed with having a budget to start to use due to demands of court time. We have a shortage of courtroom space, not because we don't have the same number of courtrooms, but during COVID times where we've had to space out, we're on musical courtrooms. When courtrooms have had to space out based upon increased use of superior court time and having to catch up on backlogs and needing larger courtrooms, having to space out with jury trials. We normally are always in one courtroom on any given day. If we have to have two juvenile courts running at the same time, that's not traditionally ever been an issue, but courtroom space now is of high demand. And so we've had a court shortage of courtroom space. We've made an adjustment to Zoom hearings whenever possible. Every different class of court has different rules in which you can have certain hearings by video conference. Juvenile court rules from even before COVID hit has been very generous in the ability to have hearings by Zoom. So when COVID hit, a number of other classes of court had to adjust their rules very, very quickly in order to have video conference hearings. Juvenile court did not. We had the ability to have video hearings in nearly every single type of case. So we were able to adjust very quickly when COVID hit to have video hearings in almost every single type of case. Now, with the blessing of being able to have all those video hearings, it does lead to longer hearings. I don't know if anyone's ever observed video court hearings. It just takes longer. It takes longer because you're waiting for people to enter the actual video hearing. You're waiting when the individuals want to talk to their attorneys. They enter what's called a breakout room. And so you're waiting for those individuals to talk in a separate space versus simply being able to lean over and whisper to their client back and forth. And so what that leads to is longer court days. I can tell you that for dependency days, you're looking at 10+ hour court days, not very many lunch breaks. And that's here in Hall County, or that's here in Dawson County, and that's here in Hall County. It's just kids and families need their day in court. We're under very strict time schedules when it comes to dependency hearings. And so that's just led to really long court days and longer hearings. The benefit, however, has been there's no backlog in juvenile court. And I can tell you that there's not very many classes of courts that have been able to say that. And I don't say that to say anything bad about any other classes of court. Juvenile or superior courts have not been allowed to have hearings. With the inability to bring juries in, they could not progress their dockets. But with no juries in juvenile court, we've been able to move along by having Zoom hearings. By adjusting very quickly to the technology that's been made available graciously by Dawson County, we have been able to adjust very quickly and not have any backlog. I can tell you that when speaking to a number of other circuits across the state, there's not a whole lot of juvenile courts that can say that they have no backlog. So I'm proud to say that in Hall and Dawson, there's no backlog today. However, I can say that this pace is no longer sustainable at this point for your judges, and particularly for our deputy clerk, Tiffany Ramsey. Juvenile court has no staff. It's the 2 judges that we have, and then Justin Powers graciously allows us to use the deputy clerk that he's assigned to juvenile court, Tiffany Ramsey, who is our assigned person for juvenile court, handles all of the paperwork that initially comes in that's filed for juvenile court, and then sits in court with us. When we're talking about case count, we've actually seen a significant increase already in 2021 in CHINS cases, those children in need of services cases, particularly truancy cases, and interestingly enough, in delinquent cases. As you can see, we've already, when I did this PowerPoint and turned in the budget presentation for 2021, we've already far surpassed the cases filed, the petitions, the charging documents in superior court. They would be like accusations or indictments. We've already surpassed the number of petitions filed in 2019 and in 2020. That's halfway through the year, just this year. In 2021, in delinquency, and again, these are like these are children charged with criminal offenses, indictments or accusations. We've already, as of July, surpassed the number that were the total number filed in 2019, and we will certainly surpass the number filed in 2020. So we're seeing an actual significant increase in the number of cases filed.
What does CHINS stand for?
Children in need of services. So those are like runaway, ungovernable, but in reality, the vast majority of those offenses are truancy cases, kids not going to school. And it's not unusual this year that we've seen throughout the state a vast number of the truancy cases now that kids are no longer doing virtual school and are required to go back in person. We've seen a great uptick now that kids had a break doing virtual school and they're required to go back in person. That's been a tough adjustment for a lot of kids now that they're required to go back in person. They're having a tough adjustment going back in person, so they're not going. So we've seen a large number of kids being charged with truancy, simply missing more than 10 days of school. And I think we'll see that trend continue, quite frankly. So Dawson County Juvenile Court has no staff, no one developing and managing programs to assist the youth that we're required to serve. So this year we're asking for a judicial assistant so that juvenile court has a full-time presence in the courthouse at all times. This individual would lessen the burden placed upon not only Ms. Ramsey, as well as the administrative responsibilities placed upon the judges. I, as the chief judge, purchase office supplies, submit all of the invoices for our office. This individual would also develop new programming for our youth and our families. Interestingly, when I pulled up the Dawson County website for juvenile court, this is what it looks like. It outlines what Dawson County Juvenile Court does. It lists actually what the contact information is. And I want to highlight some things because the address that's listed is actually the address for the clerk's office. Because Dawson County Juvenile Court doesn't have an address because there's no one when you come into the courthouse and ask for Dawson County Juvenile Court. We have an office, the judges have an office, but there's no one for us to there's no staff member for the public to interface with. There's no staff for Dawson County Juvenile Court for the public to interface with. And so the address listed is actually the 25 Justice Way. The courthouse suite 1302 is the clerk's office suite. The phone numbers listed is for Dawson County Clerk's Office. That's the phone number listed. The phone number listed for myself and Judge Toller is actually the phone number listed for Hall County Juvenile Court. We do have a phone in the office on the third floor but I mean, quite frankly, when we're here, we're on the bench. We're never in that office. I don't know that I've ever heard it ring, quite frankly, because when I come in, I drop my things there, prepare for court, and then I'm on the bench the whole time that I'm here. We have a judge in the Dawson County Courthouse 1 to 2 times a week, every single week. In addition, Judge Toller and I are on call 24/7 for Dawson County every single day of the year. And Judge Toller and I handle 1 to 2 emergency calls a week. Whether or not a child is being detained, we discuss that, whether or not where it needs to be scheduled, when it needs to be scheduled, whether or not we approve that detaining in the RYDC, whether or not a child's being brought into foster care, that takes a judge's approval. So we are dealing with Dawson County matters, regardless of whether or not we're physically in Hall County throughout the week, no matter what. But there's a judge in Dawson County 1 to 2 times a week, every single week. And then Judge Diaz is listed. And while Judge Diaz is an appointed attorney, Dawson County does not pay any of his salary. And so he actually doesn't preside in Dawson County at all either. One of the programs that I want to highlight that this individual, if approved as a judicial assistant, that would run is what's called a CHINS panel. The CHINS panel is thriving in Hall County. It is a group that would consist of representatives of the Department of Juvenile Justice, which is our probation department, or who handles probation in Dawson County. It would include the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, the Dawson County school system, again, because the vast majority of CHINS cases are truancy cases, the Department of Family and Children's Services, because quite frankly, a lot of these CHINS cases overlap with the Department of Family and Children's Services, and various local agencies that support youth and families. For instance, counseling programs, Avita that provides low cost or sometimes free mental health services. The judge, I cannot be on this panel because it's hearing evidence about a case before it would come before me. This group reviews cases where kids are charged with CHINS offenses, so those low-level offenses, and they put in services before children come into court. The children are supervised for a short period of time, 3 to 6 months, and they see whether or not these services are successful. If successful, the case is dismissed. If they're not, if the services are put in place and the children are still not successful, then this case is sent what's called formal. They're officially petitioned, sent with a formal charging document, and then they see the judge. What's unique about the CHINS panel is really the entire family's issues are addressed. It's not just necessarily the children's issues. They can put in family counseling. They can order a parent to get a drug screen. They can address the entire, they can order that the parent comply with the Department of Family and Children's Services. The CHINS panel has been extremely successful in Hall County. They divert nearly 80% of the complaints filed, meaning that 80% of the cases that come in are successfully addressed within that CHINS panel. And the recidivism rate of those cases that are successfully handled over the years of the stats that I tracked were 2014 to 2019, 13%. That means only 13% of those kids that successfully completed the program came back and were charged with a second offense. Because these kids don't come back into court, it saves everyone money. It saves judge time, it saves prosecutor time, public defender time, DJJ time, the sheriff's office time, because they're not sitting in court with me. Dawson County does not have a current CHINS panel. They did at one point when it was managed by the district attorney's office, but they were not able to continue that. It takes a lot of time in order to manage this panel, tracking it, making sure services are put in place. DJJ would be the one that would, Department of Juvenile Justice would be the one supervising the youth, but simply the actual management of the program, setting things up, calendaring it, we need someone to do that. And that's what would be part of the responsibility. But it is,
Are these volunteers on this CHINS panel? Who makes that up?
the CHINS panel would be, we would ask for a representative, the district attorney's office, ask for somebody from the public defender's office to appear, because in
Oh.
reality, it behooves them to show up because it saves them money on the other end, right? Or it saves them time on the other end. If these kids participate in the CHINS panel, then they don't have to come to court. And once they come into court, and if they're adjudicated or found guilty, then they have to come back for numerous reviews after the fact. The law requires that once a child is found guilty or adjudicated for a CHINS offense, I have to have a review in 3 months, and then another review 6 months later, and then another review 6 months after that. So it's a lot of court supervision, and that's a lot of court time for prosecutors and defense attorneys and DJJ. So it really behooves them to participate in this, and they want kids to be successful.
What's the number on the panel? And I know you said we don't have one, but
It can be, it varies. It depends really
Okay.
on the size of your community.
okay.
And then the voluntary participation of some of the community partners. The community partners would be who would be able to assist that family. So for instance, Avita would
Mhm.
oftentimes want to participate because that would be in an organization that would help put in services for that family.
Mhm.
Other programs that provide like Medicaid services, a lot of our kids are covered by Medicaid. So we would look for counseling services that take Medicaid and say, hey, would you be part of this panel? Because if we were recommending counseling, which I would say 80 to 90% would be included in counseling, you could be at the table and say, I'll take that case, right? I'm available. I have an open slot. We have a counselor available. We're able to provide services for that family. And if they're at the table, then when that case is reviewed in regards to compliance, they're already at the table to say that family's working well, that child's doing services. It's been very successful, and we have not really had a problem in regards to getting people to show up and wanting to participate.
What's the recidivism rate without, and currently in Dawson County?
How many kids come back repeatedly? I don't have that statistic. I can tell you though, that we're having a large number of, our court calendars are growing exponentially. And so, as I stated earlier, all of these CHINS cases that have come in, all of these petitions that are being filed, I have to have additional court reviews with each and every one of them. And so when a child is placed on probation, I automatically set a review in 3 months and then another one in 6 months. And so all of a sudden with 41 new cases, it grows and grows and grows and clogs calendars very, very quickly.
What do kids do? I hate to call somebody 16 a kid. If they're not in school, what are they doing?
Good question. I asked that
Where
question a
are
lot.
they? You
At
know,
home.
most of them, so they're not out lollygagging around and.
Oftentimes they're not working, right? They're not doing much of anything productive. And oftentimes, quite frankly, they're at home with parents that are not working.
And the parents don't see a need for them to go to school.
Cycle of the health of that family.
It's a cycle. And so a lot of times it's, what am I going to do? They're 15. I can't get them out of bed. And so a lot of times with those, cases, we put in family counseling, we put in parenting classes, we
Oh,
put in, well, does that child have a phone? Does that child have a phone right now? What? Why?
Mhm.
There's a lot of, that mom who weighs 110 pounds and that boy who weighs 250 pounds. No, you can't physically get them out of bed. But does that child have a TV in his room?
Mhm.
Does that child have a phone in his pocket? There's a lot of other ways to encourage school participation besides physically getting somebody out of bed. Leverage.
I mean, I
You gotta know,
couldn't
you gotta figure out what matters.
Yeah, I don't see why they're just not bored out of their minds.
Oh, no. No, they'd much rather just stay home. So, and we do, sometimes it's mental illness, right? Like sometimes it's legitimate depression
Yes.
where it's difficult for kids to get out of bed. And we put in legitimate mental health services, and maybe there's a medication issue that we need to address. And there needs to be education by parents in regards to, well, when did this change? All of a sudden were things fine until 7th grade. And then Johnny started to feel a little bit sad and more withdrawn. And then it got worse and worse and worse. There may be a very legitimate mental health issue that needs to be put in place. And with medication and with counseling, we see a very quick turnaround. And so sometimes it's just a difficult kid and a parent that's just doesn't have a lot of coping skills and parenting skills. Sometimes there is a legitimate mental health concern that we need to address.
And the panel is designed to be able to discern what's needed before it gets to you, right? Is that-
Right. And so when we have mental health providers on that panel, that's another so we have maybe a parenting educator on the panel, we have mental health providers on the panel, and the school provider as well, schools on the panel as well. So there is this child was coming to school every single day. Attendance was never an issue until this year. So like what happened, right? Or we're now in 7th grade and this child has not come to school since kindergarten. Or we've made DFACS referrals for the last 7 years and DFACS is at the table and DFACS has done this and has done this and then done. Well, maybe the need is so great that this is not one for the CHINS panel and we need to send it straight to court because it's just the problems are too great. And we have some of those where they look at the whole situation and say, too much for the CHINS panel. It's going to the judge because the judge needs to appoint a guardian ad litem or the judge, we need to get a court order in place real quick. And so
The drug courts, or it's an alternative path that prevents clogging of the system, I guess, and it's more efficient processes.
I'm sorry, can you,
I said similar to like the drug courts that the alternative courts that we have where it prevents the backlog of the system that we have and it allows lower issues to be addressed in a more efficient manner.
And it solves the issue so we don't see these families over and over and over again or sees them in alternative places, right? If we solve the issue at the family level, oftentimes, maybe we don't see the next child come up with the same issue, or we don't see that child later in Superior Court. That's at least the goal. It's a great program, but we don't have it.
This help court we have now, that's for adults. And that
Correct.
doesn't,
Right. No health.
yeah.
Right, we don't have that for juvenile court. So some of the additional responsibilities of the judicial assistant is order preparation, which would include the assignment of attorneys, family treatment court orders. Our family treatment court is really done very well in Dawson County. Judge Toller presides over that. Tracking of orders, calendar management, courtroom management, ordering of supplies and books, submission of invoices, assistance with budget preparation, statistic review. I'm a big number person. I like to look at statistics over the long haul, track things to see if something's off. Grant research, preparation and submission to our grant manager. I know that Dawson County has a grant manager. Juvenile court is like a totally different language than a Superior Court or like so many other departments. I recognize that the grant manager can be of assistance when we identify something, but there's no way that your grant manager can be an expert in juvenile court. And I can tell you that there's missed opportunities. As an example only, my court administrator in Hall County learned of a grant that had a 3-day turnaround. In 3 days, she was able to apply for and receive a $30,000 grant for tutoring services for our kids on probation. In those 3 days, I was in a contested termination of parental rights trial all day, every day. I cannot do that quick turnaround for a Dawson County grant without some assistance with a person who is assigned to Dawson County that I can say, learned of a grant, I need you to drop everything and do this. We just don't have the staff that can assist in that way. And for the development of new programs for youth on probation. I know that there are people in this community that we can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I've got this idea for this new program. Would you jump on board? I need somebody to help assist in finding those folks, help managing that, finding the space, developing the time, identifying the youth that are on our probation where that would work. To the development of pretrial diversion policies and programs, and then to help attend various stakeholders meetings for our youth or for the court. Dawson County Juvenile Court needs one full-time staff position to keep up with our growing demands placed upon us, the 2 judges that you have assigned to Dawson County, and to improve the services that we provide for the children and families that we serve. I promise you that Judge Toller and I are working really, really hard for you, that we see the ability to improve the services for the youth and the families that we need. We need the assistance in order to implement that. This would not take the position or take the place of Ms. Ramsey in the clerk's office. Quite frankly, she's doing the job of 2 people right now. We are working her to the absolute bone. We're very thankful that Justin Powers has given us Ms. Ramsey because she is a really, really hard worker. She responds to things after hours, but we're working her to the point of exhaustion at this point.
What is her job in Justin's office?
So as a juvenile court clerk, she is really doing the job of a clerk and a sort of a job as a legal assistant, as a judicial assistant. She's helping us doing a lot of the order preparation and calendar management. And so some of the job responsibilities that I listed in the PowerPoint, she's already doing some of them. If as judges, we stopped and said, wait a second, before the next case, I'm going to type out the order for the next hearing. I'm going to type this out. We'd be here till midnight every night. So she's doing some of these, but again, that then prevents her from doing some of her other responsibilities. And so we really need to divide her job so that she can complete her work for Justin and we don't, for Mr. Powers. So we don't put so much on her. We're very, very thankful for her, but she needs to remain as the clerk and we need a judicial assistant because she is simply kind of going outside of her role as the clerk. And we've just kind of imposed too much, I think, at this point. I spoke to Mr. Powers. He's very thankful that I'm asking for this position. I think at one point he was considering asking for additional help for Tiffany because he sees the fact that she is working a lot and sort of overwhelmed. So I think he was very thankful that I was asking for the position because he sees the need as well.
You don't think a part-time position could fill that role? I think it needs to be full-time.
My concern is, it goes back to, if it was a part-time position, it goes back to the same concern that we don't have then staff to meet any public. And we don't have, I don't know how it would be, I think it would be better to have a full-time position. Because at this point, we don't have staff to meet the public. We're still left with our office is the clerk's office and the phone number is the clerk's office, and the phone number for the judges should be a phone number that somebody's there to answer versus it goes to a Hall County number. I mean, it appears that there's no one serving Dawson County, and that's not accurate. Judge Toller and I are proud to serve Dawson County and work hard to serve Dawson County. And it doesn't appear that there's a presence for Dawson County, and that's just not accurate.
Other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up, planning. Is Jameson out there?
You guys know me, I always bring donuts or something. I want to help you around this year. So, you guys get started. You guys got trail mix
Now the
in
red
there.
light means.
Where's the donut? Where's the donut, Diane?
Did a
Where's the
donut.
donuts?
No, I didn't bring donuts this year.
Didn't bring donuts.
I didn't know that was happening. I had nothing to do with that.
You didn't have nothing to do with it, did you? All right. All right. What is it?
Do what?
She's gonna be the clicker. All right. All right, planning and development is next. If you look at your overall budget, you'll see that 69,000 or $68,355 more. But most of that's in the salary things that we did last year. He is asking for a rate increase for one employee and 2 new full-time positions as part of his request. James, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to start out by saying that the planning department is like no other department within our county. We bring in a significant amount of money. You know, we often get compared to the surrounding counties, just like every other department. You know, like Forsyth County, for instance, who has 80 different employees within their planning development, and that really doesn't even include their building department. We have 8 in that, and you can go through the numbers, and you know, I only have a 30-minute presentation here, but we can go through the numbers and compare ourselves to Forsyth County all day long. We do just as many commercial permits, and probably at this point we've done significantly amount more of residential permits. But ultimately, throughout really the country, you're not gonna see another presentation quite like this. We're not designed to maintain ourselves. What we charge in building fees and impact fees, they're not designed to completely pay for the planning department. But ours does. We do provide a level of service like no other, and we pride ourselves on customer service. We get a lot of compliments, we get a lot of complaints as well, but we do everything that we can. And I'll say that this staff is absolutely amazing when it comes to customer service and priding themselves on that. The next few slides will prove that we are not a burden to our taxpayers. It is not that millage rate that this board votes in that pays for this department. And we actually provide relief for other departments and their needs. What I'm asking you to do is to approve all the requests that we have provided, because, you know, we are conservative in our budget. That is what we do. We look at what our needs and we cut out the things that we don't. We could ask for the moon and stars, but we're not. We're going to ask for what we need, and we're going to grow based on what the economy is doing. I'm the first one to say that the planning department should be the first person or the first department to add people. It should also be the first department to cut people when the economy takes a turn. Right now, you will see an uptick, and I believe these next few slides will show that. But ultimately, if we don't grow the planning department, what we're going to see is a loss of customer service and a loss of the level of service that we provide directly to our taxpayers. What we're looking at here is our expenditures from 2019, 2020, and the budget 2021. Obviously, there's a small increase between 19 and 20, but 2021 saw a significant increase, and mainly that was between the salary study and the addition of a planner is that increase there. Revenue. We bring a lot of money in through business licensing. Currently I have one business license technician. She handles probably close to 1,600 different business licenses that come in. And right now they come in the door to renew every year. So she sees every single one of them, either in person or she opens a letter in the mail and processes that information. Planning and permits and impact fees. I included impact fees on this slide only. I've taken it out for the rest of the slides, but I just wanted to let y'all see the grand totals of what this department does for the county. And as you can see, in 2019, it was 1.6 million, 2.4 million in 2020. And through July, just through the end of July of this year, we've already brought in 1.3. We're going to cap what we did last year and significantly do what we more this year. One of the things I'd like to point out is on this particular slide is the difference in 2019 and 2020 in planning permit fees. Now, one of the biggest differences when that is we went up in our building supply costs or our building permit costs, and we went up in a significant amount. Now, that was something that this planning department, we went to the development authority, we went to the economic authority, we sat with staff, we sat with the Chamber of Commerce. We told everybody, hey, we're going up. And we went up because those fees were set in 2000 or 2001. So you can see the increased significant amount of what we're going to do. And we're only going to see that moving forward. So just your simple math, we're going to just show you what our margins are. Our margins are about $200,000 in 2019. It was over $600,000 in 2020. In 2021, through July, we just about broke even halfway through the year. I believe the projected, when I was before this board last year, they projected us to do what we did in the first 4 months for the entire year. So it just shows you that growth didn't slow down. We wanted to wait and see what the new president did, what the economy was going to do, and it's still significantly growing at a rapid pace. So before we try to project what the next few years do, we have to look in what we have now. This is just a list of what we have of the developments that we have either at the LDP stage, which is land disturbance permit, or they're already starting to go vertical. These are residential, commercial developments. If you total these up, we're looking at over the next 3 years, most of these things will be built out. We're looking at 673 townhomes, single family residences over 1,600, and 979 multifamily units. Now, these have already been approved through zoning. These are either in the land disturbance phase, which they're clearing out a bunch of land. I'm sure y'all get calls about that, or they are currently going vertical. 3,295 different units. What I will say is if you look on the Census Bureau right now, it says that our estimated population is around 26,000 people. It also says that we average about 2.6 or 2.5 people per home. So simple math will tell you that's around 10,000 people. That is an absolute significant increase. And that totals almost 1 million different inspections that, I'll point to Keith, that's going to have to directly come through his department. So they're checking and making sure that these buildings are safe for all the different residences moving forward, providing a level service. So with that said, what we are requesting is $728,000, $782 in budget. That is with the addition of upgrading our tablets, moving more people in the field, giving people in the field better technology, training budget, which is significant, was increased to provide training to those people in the field. And I've stood before you every year as the director, as I was the director, and said that if you don't provide training to your people, they will get frustrated and they will leave. Training is the essential of keeping people and keeping the morale, having them to have the stuff that they need to make those decisions is extremely important. Personnel requests that we were adding, and this is out the door cost, is $166,912, which totals $895,000 for a total budget for this year. So we're still looking at, if we project out next year, we're still looking at a margin of almost $200,000. So what are we asking for? We could go line item by line item if you want to, Chairman, but we're asking to upgrade our administrative assistant to an office manager. We're adding that middle tier. Right now, everyone reports directly to the planning director. That's a tough thing. And it's frustrating at times because you have your hand in so many different things. We have to be able to give people not only the pay, but the positions to have some sort of middle tier management to allow them to run with things. A plan review manager, which is also the residential stormwater manager. What we've seen is an uptick of people wanting to do land disturbance permits for residential, which takes a lot of time and effort. It's a burden onto on our marshal's department, which they work in conjunction. It's difficult when I have to explain that my building official, who's supposed to be making decisions, is out there looking at a residential stormwater issue of a pipe getting filled up on some sort of private road because we have someone that didn't put a silt fence. The things that we need, those middle tiers. Plan review is something that's extremely important moving forward in commercial. That person is the central person to talk to the fire department, public works, Etowah Water and Sewer. Everything needs to go through one central person. Right now, that one central person is also our building official that's making some of the most important decisions moving forward in Dawson County. And the front desk clerk, which is frozen. A lot of our calls, a lot of our emails and everything come right through Mickey, our permit specialist. Basically, this person will be the front person and do more of a dispatch to kind of, let's get the information to the people that need to hear it. A lot of times when people call in, they want to tell you a lot of things, right? They want to tell you kind of their life story. What we want to do is we want to have that person up front that kind of gets that, and we can get that directed to that front person. And that person can work directly with, our person up front to help get the information to the right people so they can make the best decisions quickly and efficiently. But ultimately, that's the number right there. $1,906,253. If we project out what we're going to make next year, bring in the planning department over what everything I'm asking for, out the door cost. Like if you were to go buy a car, you were like, what's the out the door cost, right? That's it right there. I'll be happy to answer any questions and go further into any details that you wish us to do.
Questions for Jameson?
Is Margaret your front person? Is she the one that's counted as the front desk? I mean, I know she does more than that, but when I go, that's the one that most of the time I see.
Absolutely. She's the one sitting right up front, and she's who I call the face of our department right now. She is actually our business license technician.
Yes, yeah, but I mean, that's the one that always jumps up unless somebody happens to be walking by.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And that has a lot to do with where she's at. And she does, she jumps in. We're a team. We're absolutely a team. So if you come in, you ask her a permit question, she'll do her best to answer it because we're all busy. She kind of takes the walk-ins and kind of disperses them from there. Mickey handles all the phone calls that come in. So we kind of divide and conquer on that. But She's our business license technician. She just handles business licenses. You can talk to as many businesses as you want. They all love Miss Margaret.
She gets it done, gets it out quick.
So right now, Keith, you're doing all the plan reviews and plus doing inspections, because y'all got 2 inspectors.
We have 2 inspectors. I fill in when I'm not.
Sorry, I didn't want to put you on the spot.
That's all right. That's all right. Y'all guys know me. I'm Keith Wilson. Answer your question, I do. I got Tom and Jerry doing inspections. The majority of the time, I do go out and do some inspections, but that being said, I was talking to James this morning. I wrote up a little something about the plan review. As of right now, I spend about 80% of my week dealing with plan review in one form or the other, whether that's sending out comments, setting up reviews, approving plans, stamping plans, reviewing plans. We have 3 people that actually take part in the plan review process. Diane does the invoicing and the permitting, which among other things, I mean, that's a pretty good job for her to do. I've got Robbie that he reviews plans for Dawson County ordinances. Of course, I distribute the plans, I set up the plan review, stamp the plans. And you got to look at, when we get a set of plans in, we get a set of civil plans in, I got 8 people that look at those plans. So I've got, after every plan review, I've got 8 people sending me comments that I've got to get together. I've got to package them. I got to send them out. Same thing on the building. Just to give you a little line item, we've got, so far in 2021, we've approved 40 sets of commercial plans. That's building and civil. Y'all are familiar with some of the big developments coming in. We have 35 sets in plan review right now. It takes an average, if a set of plans comes in and there's no revisions, no comments, anything on it, I can get them out the door in 3 weeks usually. It's usually 2 weeks on the plan review and then approve them. That's not the norm. It usually takes 6 to 8 weeks because most every set of plans that come in have revisions. That carries on and carries on. I mean, you're looking at this, it's real time consuming. To speak with what Jameson said earlier, on top of that, here 2 years ago, we really started pushing erosion plans for residential. When actually it was 3 years ago. We found out Dawson County wasn't adhering to the EPD standards like we were supposed to with soil erosion plans. We were getting them here and there. So we all went and got our blue cards, our red cards, got trained on soil erosion. Got the process down. Well, now with every, I don't say every, but all the ones that come across my desk, all the residential plans that come through, I look at them, and if they need a soil erosion plan, what are required? That being said, if we had that part of the plan review too, that would alleviate, because that's another, I don't know, we probably get 5 soil erosion plans a week that I have to send over to Louise in RCS for her to approve, and then she sends it back to me. So it's all this is a time consuming part on my end. So, I mean, that being said, that's my primary input for a plan review, is to try to alleviate, and if we get somebody in there full time, it's a full-time position. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Thank you.
I would like to add just one thing to that. In my calculations, I didn't ask for the minimum salary range of these positions, of any position that I've asked across planning, GIS, or I asked for the mid-range, because we need to be able to negotiate with people. And I'm not saying that we're going to bring them in at the mid-range by any means, but we need the ability to pick somebody from that is certified in certain things. And if they do have certain qualifications, like the plan review manager should be certified in plan review, we're going to have to pay for that position. So in my calculations, I asked for the mid-range of everything. That way, as we get applications, we can work with them based on their based on their qualifications and their years of experience. We don't have to start them at the bare minimum. Because the person that will be doing plan review, obviously, as we have 15, 18, sometimes 25 pages of inspections, we're all on the same team. You know, I go out and do inspections. We have, sometimes our marshals have to go out and do inspections. You know, that person's going to have to do those, jump in and be a part of the team just as much as everybody else. So.
Other questions?
So you have to, do you have to have a certification to be a plan reviewer?
There is a certification to be a plan reviewer.
Oh.
It's not a requirement on the state level,
Okay.
but at the same time, you know,
Makes
there's a
sense.
plumbing inspection. You know, we only have one person on staff that does, it's actually certified in the plumbing inspections. But doesn't mean that the rest of our staff can do it because they're trained. They just haven't passed that certification test.
Mhm.
The plans, I mean, because I've looked at them before. I mean, your civil plans, mechanical plans, you got your plumbing, heating, air, electrical, you got your structural plans. I mean, when a set of plans come in, then if you have comments on each one, then you got to wait on the people to redline them, bring them back. It's not just looking at the footprint of a building. It gets pretty well involved.
Oh, no. And some of the lately, some of the ones that came in are held together by, they're not stable. They got nuts and bolts with them as far as their thickness. So we definitely understand that.
Other questions for Jameson about planning?
You had asked for those. The plan review, but also do the stormwater. Okay, Public Works Director had asked for stormwater. How would that work? Would that be similar together?
Absolutely. So as of, no, absolutely. And that's an excellent question. So as of right now, I am the liaison to the EPD. So anytime the EPD comes to this county, has an issue or whatever, they call me directly. Brian is our stormwater manager. He is in the Public Works Department, but he only handles commercial stormwater. So all residential stormwater. So if you, we can go back to the slide that shows you all the different residences. Those are going to be residential stormwater. Those are things that these guys are inspecting every time they go out and do an inspection. Before they walk into a house that's being built, they're going to walk around the house to make sure that they have the proper BMPs and they are certified and qualified and trained up to look at that. So from a commercial standpoint, that's what the responsibility is currently under the Public Works Department. We handle just residential stormwater, and which is something that is becoming somewhat of a burden onto us. So did that
And are
answer
they
your
very
question?
different? Is it very different?
Yeah.
There's a
I
lot more
see.
standards especially because we have the MS4 area, which is basically the greater Atlanta area. And there's a lot more regulations on commercial stormwater in that area, as far as keeping track of outfalls and doing annual reports and those types of things are handled from the public works standpoint. We're just looking for making sure that basically they follow the plan that they submitted, that we work hand in hand with Louise to make sure that these plans are approved. And then we go on site and make sure that these plans are followed the way they said they're going to.
Yes.
Dawson County is certified as the LIA, which is local issuing authority for the EPD. So that certification is very hard to get and maintain. So by them being able to do the residential inspections helps to solidify that certification.
Yeah, and as Keith stated, because I've got my blue card too, but 4 years ago, they came out with the new regulations for residential and requiring a retention pond at each site while you're building. And that's one thing. And then what is that system they got now where you got to filter it too? So it's a lot more added on, and it's coming down from the Fed down, trickle down. we have to pay for. They don't fund us, but we have to pay for. it. And it's just
Absolutely, and that's-
Increase the,
And that's training that each one of my building inspectors.
Unfunded mandate.
yeah,
Yes.
unfunded mandate.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that's our red card and our blue card.
Yeah.
Our blue card is for people grading on site. Our red card is for our inspections, and every single one of our marshals and our building inspectors are required to have both now because of these regulations. That local issuing authority that comes directly through plan and development to update and maintain. So
For those, if I may, again,
Go ahead.
for those in the public that don't understand, the MS4, Microsoft, pardon me?
Your mic's off. They might not be able to hear you.
Still negotiable.
Okay. As I was saying, for the public's benefit and the commission, the MS4 is basically designated by the state as urbanized area. And as populations trip certain thresholds or certain development occurs in certain areas, they come back and they reclassify that land and they refer to it as an MS4. And it's basically, it has to do with water quality. And those water quality standards are much more stringent and follow, the urbanized area for Atlanta and those areas. And so as we begin to grow and begin to trip those thresholds, we will begin to expand that MS4 criteria to more of the county, which is a pretty demanding and labor intensive, if you will, position. Whereas you heard the other day, there's regulatory requirements, there's inspections that need to be done, there's reports that need to be filed on a regular basis, and it becomes very involved. So I just wanted to explain that MS4 side of things because it sounds like some Secret Service type thing. But it is. And as we continue to grow, we'll probably see more and more of that expansion throughout the county.
But he's been around for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. I think,
Long
was it
Absolutely.
2000 and
Seemed like
12,
Robbie
13.
used to mess.
it's right around there.
It's been a while.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's all harbored and it's all done right through the plan and development in conjunction with the Public Works Department. But plan and development holds that umbrella for stormwater. So we understand absolutely what.
I guess back to Vicky's original question, can you not have one person that does both commercial and residential for stormwater?
Potentially. Okay, so the history of the position. You were absolutely correct. It was Robbie's position. It was a plan
Mhm.
review manager and a stormwater manager. It was all wrapped up in one position. That position left the planning and development and went to Public Works. But it did not take away the residential stormwater, which got soaked up by our building officials. And then the plan review manager duties was kind of bounced around between Diane and I for a couple of years and eventually landed on Keith and his responsibility. But we're at the point now in which we need that position back.
So if we had one position, would it rather be in Public Works or would it rather be in planning and zoning?
I would make the argument that it should be plan and development, obviously. The plan director is the person that is on the hook for the local issuing authority. It is my name under the EPD currently, so which will change over. And as we move forward, we can have more discussions on that.
Fair enough.
Other questions for Jameson, plan and development? Okay. Are you doing GIS?
I will move over to GIS.
All right.
I did not have a presentation for GIS, but I think
You're asking for the one position.
I'm asking for the one position. So essentially, I asked Devin, I said, why don't you give me a few talking points because she's the one that's in it every day. In fact, I was on the phone with her this morning because we should probably say a prayer for someone that's currently lost out at the edge of the world. And they were asking for some, fire chief was asking for some maps on that this morning. Well, Devin is currently on vacation this morning, so I had to jump back into my GIS role. It's like riding a bike, right? Where we had to create some maps for them and grid off some areas. And But I asked Devin, this is her world, so I asked her for just a few talking points. On some of the major issues that she has that we've addressed most of those in the budget. First is some of the IT issues that she has. Our IT department is a great department, but they are struggling as well. We have tapped out on the amount of space that our GIS department can use. So we've had to run through other sources for some external hard drives. If you ever had to work off an external hard drive and some massive data, it's just slow. So there's a lot of times when you see her over by the water cooler, her computer is crunching numbers as fast as she can go. And so she's like, I can't really do any analysis until those numbers are crunched. You know, that's one of our issues. One of her biggest goals over the next 3 years is to move toward an enterprise system, which is going to completely integrate GIS into absolutely every department. I think that's an excellent goal. One of the current goals for next year, if this new position is added, is splitting parcels for the tax assessor. Right now, they outsource to Q Public, and we've had multiple conversations with the tax assessor over the last couple of months. And then 911. 911 is in desperate need of a GIS person. Every time they see the letters GIS, they send it over to Devin, and she's, you know, we work with Caliber through our NG911 integration. You know, another person just to be able to coordinate in between the tax assessor's office, 911, the fire department, the sheriff's office. You know, having all your information in one place will prove itself more valuable moving forward, because it's going to be able to provide information to the board and to other staff members to make the best decisions possible.
What was $100,000 we spent on technology? That was the goal of that.
That was Intergov system for the planning department. And that's one of the things that I'm sorry.
What's the ROI been on that? I mean, have we seen a ability for that to streamline and be more efficient in the processes of cross communication across departments?
Not as of yet, mainly because we haven't fully implemented it yet, because we ran into some technical issues with our current Intergov system that we weren't able to update. We still are in the process of rolling that out slowly and in different phases. So we haven't seen the full return on investment for Intergov as of yet, but the basis of that is our GIS system, and to make sure that everything comes through GIS, through the planning department, which then services multiple other departments. She was also mentioned in a vehicle, and I told her, I promised her I'd mention this. She uses our pool vehicle probably at least 1 to 2 days a week. There's some weeks in which she spends everything, the entire week out in the field. The new position that I'm asking for, the GIS coordinator, is kind of a spin-off of what was the 911 mapper. So currently it's a frozen position in planning and development. It needs to be moved over to the GIS department, unfrozen, and it really needs to be more of a coordinating position, because right now she handles the majority of our 911 mapping in conjunction with the planning department. Unfreezing that position and reallocating it as a GIS coordinator would give Devin just an extra body, so she could do so much more. You're going to see the need on GIS over the next couple of years be the burden there to be extremely great. And we have done a master plan, and we've sat down with every department, see what their needs are, and we've also educated them on what GIS can do for them. But her pool vehicle, she says it needs to be 4-wheel drive. It's funny when she calls me, she goes, I'm stuck again. And a lot of times it's just, she pulled off on the side of the road. And so I promised her I would mention that. But some of the accomplishments are a lot of successful search and rescues that she's been thoroughly involved in. She's, if you want to say first responders, she's out there in those trailers, helping those guys every step of the way, coordinating with 911 rescue as much as the citizens that are rescuing. Surveys for county initiatives, data tracking, 911 dispatch, Intergov, which you mentioned was that project, PubWorks with Public Works, Caliber with the sheriff's office, and asset data tracking. But basically what I'm asking for her in that department is the biggest cost you see on there is the Eagle View contract for the, in conjunction with the tax assessor's office, at $18,541. The rest of it is training and education increases. They seem somewhat minimal, but the out the door cost for the GIS coordinator is $91,913. Once again, I'm asking for the salary to be at the mid-range. That way we can bring in someone that's, hopefully we can get someone that experience. Obviously, if we have bring in someone with no experience and we have trained them up, we'd start them at the minimum. But we want that ability to be able to negotiate with them so we don't have to come back to the board and ask for additional funds.
Questions on GIS?
On the Eagle View contract, what did you say that was for? I know you said it was between, is that for splitting the parcel? Is that what you were talking about? Or?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't clarify that. No, that is actually for our satellite or our satellite. It's our flyover imagery.
Oh, okay.
So right now, what the tax assessor has is the ability to look at all 4 different angles, the north, south, east, and west version of every building. So if you took this building right here, normally what we would fly, we'd see that top down
The
view.
other day, I just didn't know the name of it.
It's our Eagle View.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
it.
And then, do you know the number of, you were talking about the new person splitting the parcels and taking that away from contracting out to Q Public? Is there a savings that we would have there? Do you know what that would be, or would that?
That is a better question for the tax assessor. I believe it's around $10,000 a year, and please don't quote me on that. That's a rough estimate, looking at their contract that we contract out to Q Public. But at the same time, we lose a lot of data integrity and other types of things that if it was done in-house, we could coordinate better in-house. Right now, they just compile it up, they send it over to Q Public and they split it. If someone were to come in and say, oh, well, my property line's wrong, which I'm sure y'all probably heard before, we could fix that in-house and have a much more fluid, updated process along the way. They're still going to utilize our data to put onto the Q Public website. But having that split in-house is just, there's a great advantage of doing that, especially within the planning department.
Other questions? GIS? Not? You doing the Marshall? You doing
Yes, sir.
Marshall?
Absolutely.
They're asking for 2 positions in the marshal's office.
So what you're going to see in the marshal's office is similar to planning and development. What we're looking to do over the last 3 years, we've done our best to try to separate planning and development in the marshal's office. When I came on board, I believe half of Grayson's time was spent doing building inspections. But nonetheless, what you're going to see over the next couple of slides is exactly that. We've separated them out. We've given them the majority of the alcohol revenue sales to show that they are actually making money for the county. 2019, 119,000, 2020, 169,000. That was the addition of Angela's position here. And then 2021 budget was just increases based on the salary study. All right, so where do they bring in revenues? Background checks. Background checks are our employee permits. Anybody who is either selling across the counter any type of alcohol or is serving alcohol in an open container for consumption, they have what you call an employee permit, which they do background checks. It's basically a $20 cash charge. As you can see right now, we had a downtick in that in 2020 due to COVID because most of the restaurants were closed, so they didn't come in and renew their employee permits. But through June of this year, you can see that we have significantly increased, and we're actually going to do more this year in background checks than we did in 2019. That's kind of our gauge as to alcohol sales. Alcohol licenses is a number that we can directly depict, and we can project those because we know exactly the businesses who sell alcohol, what types of alcohol they sell, who they sell it to, where their distributors come from. And we maintain all of that information within our Marshal's department. That is Angela's job, which is pretty impressive. So we can project that number out. Those numbers will come in. You won't see those on your key indicator report right now because they don't come in, they don't start coming in rolling until October, November timeframe. But the biggest number is excise tax. So they send an excise tax every month. Those numbers are projected in your key indicator report. And that is the large, and I'm not saying all of that tax should come back to the Marshal's department. But nonetheless, it should fund the checking up on employee permits, the checking up on even in our alcohol ordinance. It goes as far to say that we can walk into anybody who sells alcohol and we can go through your books to make sure that your current inventory matches what you're telling us. And we don't necessarily do that on a regular basis because that is very taxing, but we do check up on employee permits at least twice a year. So the totals for those were 651,000 in 2019, 722,000, which was a pretty good increase in 2020. And through June of this year was 481,000, which Harmon, you'll go to the next slide. It'll show you that we've already shown a profit of, or a margin there of almost $300,000 this year through June. I did this presentation back in June because I didn't know where we would be at this point. So I did not include the July numbers in there, which were in your key indicator report. Moving forward, what we are asking for, we're asking for an increase of $213,000. The biggest increase in that really is our tablets and our computers for in the field. Because as we completely upgrade to Intergov with that $100,000 the board was, we appreciate the board giving to us. That's going to allow our marshals to actually be in the field, and we have to buy more technology so they can actually do their stuff in the field and not have to call into Angela so she has to put them. We are asking for 2 positions, and the 201,169 is the out the door cost. That is additional vehicle for an animal control officer. That is, training budget, computer, out the door cost, and a marshal's manager. Once again, everyone reports directly to the planning director. That marshal's manager gives you that middle tier. And I'd like to let Angela speak just a second on the, you can go to the next slide. About that marshal's manager. This is going to show you that if you approve this slide right here just shows you if you approve the out the door costs and you approve everything that we're asking for. Like I said, I don't think there's any reason not to approve everything we're asking for because we bring it in. You're still looking at over $300,000 in profit in a margin, and those supplement every other department. And that just shows you that our marshal's department, while we may lose money when every time we go, we write a citation because all the fees and the court costs and everything else, we still bring in this money because of excise tax and because of those background checks and because of those things. Our margin is still there. I didn't include all the revenue sources, which Angela kind of got onto me for because she'd like to talk about short-term rentals and what we charge short-term rentals as well, which has been somewhat of a hot topic lately. I'm good at the last slide. So $300,000 we're asking for 2 positions. An animal control officer obviously is a need. Currently, we have 2 code enforcement officers. One of them utilizes almost full-time as an animal control officer. We're asking for an animal control officer and the vehicle that comes along with them, and then the marshal's manager, which I will let Angela speak about.
Actually, I can speak about both of them, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I've got my opportunity. So good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Board. I'm sorry, Chairman, Commissioners. I've been taking
We're all
Benadryl
commissioners.
this
We're good.
morning, and I have to tell you, it's thrown me a little off kilter, so y'all have to bear with me. This could be good or it could go sideways. I want to thank y'all for being here. I also want to say good morning today, Vicki, Natalie, and Laura. Thank you to all the people who have done all this work to make this possible. And although I know you've done a lot of behind the scenes stuff, so I'm grateful for that. And thank you for being here. So before we get started, I do want to say, Jameson, thank you very much for the excellent overview of the Marshal's office budget. The money that you utilize, all of our expenses, but also the money that the Marshal's office is responsible for bringing into the county. I personally think you clearly confirmed that the financial capability is there that's going to support the two people that Jameson is asking for. So what I'd like to do is begin by providing you with an overview of what the Marshal's office is responsible for, where we are now and some of the challenges that we're facing, as well as what we look to gain as an office with the addition of these two employees. So as Jameson pointed out, but I just want to reiterate this, currently the Marshal's office consists of Jameson as our chief marshal, code enforcement, Grayson, animal control, Brendan, and the administrative assistant, me. I don't know if you're familiar with our responsibilities, but we do anything that has to do with an animal, and I literally mean any animal, though we do hand a lot of it off to DNR. We handle domestic animal code cases, and DNR, of course, handles the wildlife. We have, of course, the code cases, not a big portion, but a larger and larger portion of that is becoming stormwater, erosion, those kinds of things, as we build more houses here in the county. We're responsible for the excise tax for alcohol, employee alcohol permits, which includes the background checks that Jameson was talking about, the biannual alcohol audits, short-term rentals, sign permits, and the donation boxes. And beginning in 2022, we're going to take over all of the alcohol licensing, as Jameson mentioned. So I think this will just tell a better story than anything. I'm going to share with you, I know Jameson had mentioned several times the key indicator report. This is something that we turn in every single month to Jameson. And of course, I've color coded it. If someone wants me later to explain all those color codes, but you'll notice in the bottom of the revenues that we generated, and at the top, thank you, I have placed just code enforcement and animal control. So I know once you hand something out to everybody, you lose their attention. So I want y'all to still hear what I'm trying to say. Couple of things I want to point out to you. As you look at the far right column, I have placed an arrow next to items that have increased, and many of them dramatically, over 2019 and 2020. I think the first time I looked at this report, I know the first number I would look at, because we are asking for an animal control officer, I looked at that top right line and I saw animal control cases. Now you look at 245, and I can do the math quickly on that one and say, okay, at the end of the year, we've got approximately 600. If you break that into 52 weeks, that's like 10 cases a week, right? And you're like, what is that animal control officer doing? Sitting back, twiddling his thumbs all day long. Well, the reason I wanted to share this report to you was to give you an overall vision of everything that is happening in the Marshal's office. But what the key indicator report does not reflect are the number of touches, follow-up visits that we have for every case. So when you look at that 245, just know that there has been an average of 5 to 10 additional touches where that one particular case is concerned. And that also does not include, it only encompasses how many we were getting per month. What it's not taking into consideration is all the cases that have come over from the year before. And the ongoing cases include things like dog bites. It includes, we've had a lot of problems, a lot of complaints of late. We have to do a lot of welfare checks on animals. Those take up tremendous amounts of time. Of course, we get things from the sheriff's office, anytime there's, neglect, abuse, and then of course those animals running at large. That's something I want you to be thinking about. So I think by adding this position, some of the things I want to point out that it's going to do for us, particularly in code, because as Jameson had mentioned, we have an animal control officer. I anticipate the new person will also, they'll be trained in animal and code enforcement. This will give us the ability to be proactive, more proactive as a team versus reactive. And by that, I mean, we don't have to necessarily wait on the complaints. When we see things, rather than racing to the complaints, we will now have a little bit more of a bandwidth where we can address those on our own, particularly with code. Now, I have to do a shout out for code this year because we've got it on the schedule and we're trying to become very regimented on our sign pickups, particularly in the 400 corridor, but in the county, making people aware of the fact that those signs are illegal. Things like, my brain just went completely. But anyway, proactive versus reactive. Another thing, when you've got two people in the field, if someone takes a vacation, gosh forbid, they're out sick or anything like that, or they need to have training, you're left with one person. Imagine what that does. It all now puts everything on them. Now we're backtracking, we're trying to catch up, and invariably that is something that's going to impact the citizens wise, because you just never know when it's going to be an extremely day. So it'll give us backup, overall faster response times. I'll tell you something interesting, and this is how it happens often. Monday morning, you walk in, there's about 10 cases that we have to address just like that. So what I start doing is building the cases, dispatching. Well, we prioritize, but we get to them as we can. This, by having a third person, can increase our overall response times. There'll be cross-training across the board. And when I say cross-training, I also mean within the office. Currently, Grayson and I are the only ones that are GCIC certified for the alcohol. However, as we bring additional people in, we can begin to cross-train more people so that not only will they be versed out in the field, but they can also lend a helping hand in the office when it's needed. The ability to have potential flex schedules for after-hour and weekend options. Now, I don't mean that we're going to bring someone in and go ahead and revamp the whole schedule, but there have been many times, and we get a lot of screams from the public, where sometimes we may need someone checking things out after hours, or we may need someone Saturday. We tend to have a lot of things going on, and people know what our hours are. So in particular instances, they take advantage of that because it's not there Monday through Friday, and suddenly Saturday and Sunday, it's all visible. So we may be able to look into doing some Saturday work as well. And quite frankly, just the bandwidth for training. We're a little remiss. Jameson nailed it with the training comments, because training is what builds your employees. It empowers them to do a better job. It empowers them to progress their own careers. So this gives us a little more bandwidth for training. So that addresses the animal control officer. Did y'all have any questions on that? I'm going to touch on the office manager briefly. Any questions?
Nope. Keep it brief though.
I'm
gotta
going
move
keep it
on.
brief. How long do I have?
You're already past.
I am.
Be quick.
Thank you, sir. Well, Jameson has requested an office manager. If you look at the key indicator report, I will tell you that 98% of those line items are hit on a
Do they
daily
have a 10:30?
basis.
Okay, you're good. Then you got
Mhm.
9 minutes.
Oh, my gosh, there I was stressing out. Thank
Yeah.
you, Natalie.
I
Natalie
thought
gets,
everybody was on the 30-minute plan.
Natalie gets the award for the day. Thank you, Natalie. I was going to start talking like I was from New York.
Go.
So anyway, 98% of those line items are touched on a daily basis. And again, what this key indicator report does not measure is the time that it actually takes to accomplish all of these things and maintain all of these line items. It just doesn't even begin to address it. So by adding a manager so let me back up a bit. In a perfect world, as I look at this key indicator report and I see all these numbers and I think, wouldn't it be great if a short-term rental, I sent my letter out, they sent their money in, I posted it, filled everything in, and we're done. Or someone applying for a short-term rental called me up and said, Angela, what do I do? I send out their record, their one sheet with their affidavit, which has all the items we need in red. And they fill it out, send it back in. I take their money and I permit it. That sounded beautiful, didn't it? Unfortunately, that one item, that is not how it works. Hours, sometimes hours I spend with one short-term rental person that's trying to get a new short-term rental. And just as a side note, you'll see this on report, 74 that we've just identified that are not permitted, and they just got letters sent to them this week. So that's just to give you a little bit
74?
idea. I'm sorry. sir.
74?
74. Actually, it changed to 77 this morning. Brenda just came to my office with 3 more.
Okay.
So with that said, we're now up to almost 150 of the short-term rentals. So my whole point there, currently right now, and again, the point here is not to say I do it all, but I'm saying right now, administratively in the office, we are a one-man show. But Jameson, where'd you go, Jameson? Jameson's help, of course. So by adding a manager to the marshal's office, that's what we're doing. We're adding a layer there of someone who will also boots on the ground, help, but they can also continue to manage the process and work with the administrative assistant to maintain that constant good customer service with the citizens. So managing the office, handling the irate citizens and concerns when they call or come into the courthouse. Currently, Jameson helps with this, but I get the brunt of that. Lead the marshal's team through coaching and mentoring. And not that they're not already getting that, but Jameson, as he says, and he's correct, and I don't do that, they are, he's wearing a lot of hats. But having that middle management person there can begin to do this because we have some great talent that looks good for the future of this county. And they need to be mentored and coached and groomed. Empower the team to take leadership roles and broaden their skill set. And that was kind of what I was talking about. Even though these people are out in the field, we want to cross-train. My ideal world would be to have, which I already do, the administrative assistant goes out once every quarter and spends a whole day in the field with code and animal, because it gives you that full view and perspective on what's actually going on out in the field. Continue to schedule, follow through on monthly and quarterly initiatives, such as sign cleanup, maintenance of county businesses, and particularly those that are no longer in business, alcohol audits, and much more. In closing, I've shared challenges that the marshal's office faces, which is too few employees, no backup, slower response times, and frankly, an incredibly too much of a workload for only 3 people. The benefit to the county to add these 2 additional employees and to benefit our citizens will be improved response times, broader bandwidth such as weekend monitoring potentially, consistent follow through, and a face to the community, as well as continued excellent service. All right, Chairman, I'm done. Did y'all have questions?
Questions? I do have a comment.
Okay.
I don't have a question. And I think David can attest to this because when I first got into this position, one of the things that he and I talked about early on, and y'all both mentioned it, was becoming proactive, especially through code enforcement, the marshal's office, and some of the things that are out there. Because, I like for us to be ahead of the complaint. In other words, we talked about, getting to that point where when we know, for example, that something's being built or done, we just go by and check on it. And we don't wait for somebody to call and say something's running across the road, or this is stopped up, or that's been done. So I like the proactive approach that you're taking. I'm a proactive type person. I don't like to be reactive to anything, although we County government is reactive to a whole lot. And Vicky can tell you this, that I get frustrated with the slowness of government and how it works. But I want to thank y'all for your presentation. It's a good presentation. And also want to thank you for looking proactive.
Thank you. And
Thank
it's,
you.
as we look proactive into the future, we have to look at the issues that we have. And we always know that, we're always going to be limited up by budget and personnel. We understand that and we can appreciate that. The ways to mitigate that is to write more citations. Unfortunately, to mitigate having to touch each one of these cases multiple times. I sat down with Judge Tarnacki and our legal on Wednesday or Tuesday, I believe, to discuss a fee schedule to where we can just write a citation and people can come in and pay a fine. Currently, you have to come in and you have to go through everything. One of the things that we pick up a lot, a lot of our times spent is on feral cats. And unfortunately, that's just a situation that we have. We've worked with the Humane Society on coming up with the solution to that. So we can reduce the amount of feral cats by releasing them back into spade, neuter them, release them back into the wild. We've case studies, but once again, all of that stuff takes time to implement, and then it takes years of implementation in order to get into the process of mitigating that.
And cooperation.
Absolutely.
It takes cooperation from businesses and all.
And they brought that up when they spoke.
Mhm.
With-
I just want,
Go ahead.
I just want to take a moment. I know this is your last hurrah, but the department that you guys or that you're running or have been leading and managing for a while is one of our fastest growing departments. And just from me personally, done a good job and I appreciate your leadership. You wear a lot of hats, probably hats that you don't even know you wear are sitting in your closet in there that you don't know yet. But thank you for what you've done and the attitudes of all the employees that are in that department, because I know y'all pull a lot of weight and it's appreciated. So thank you. And thank you for working through this process, because I know it's you wanted to stay and get through this presentation. So I appreciate that.
It's these guys behind me. It's every step of the way. There's no way to wear all these hats without and beside me. But, there's a good group. This is a good
So
team.
that tells you they work as a team when you take jokes like that.
Mhm.
Good job.
Thank you.
I thank y'all.
Thank you, Jameson. Thank you, Natalie.
That's why we signed up for 2 spots, by the way. I tried to sign up for 3 for GIS as well, but. Thank y'all.
Well, I hope you like where you're going.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
I thoroughly enjoyed my time here with Dawson County.
Thank you for
You've
your
done
good
a
job. You have done a really good job.
It's a hard act to follow. Let's see what happens next.
All right, chief,
Let's
come
take a
on
break.
up. We'll take a few minute break. Okay, let's take a couple minute break.
Okay.
Couple break. He had to go.
Yours, Tim. Short-term
Chief Thompson, as you know, is over fire, EMS, EMA, fire marshal's office. So he's got a few hats too that spin
Mhm.
around. So he's asking for some personnel as well as some capital that he'll probably touch on as he goes through his presentation. Chief.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'll start with our capital request, and then I'll transition into personnel request as well. So our capital request this year, we have 3 items on there. 2 of them kind of go hand in hand. The first one is we have about 30 of the air cylinders that the firefighters wear as part of their breathing apparatus to go into burning buildings that are reaching the end of their service life. And that's going to occur over the next 3-year period. So in an effort to kind of start spacing some of those purchases out, we're going ahead and try to secure funding this year to start with 22 of them. And then this will be augmented by replacing 14 new air packs as well. We currently still have we have 3 brands of air packs that we use here in Dawson County. We have Scott, ISI, and the Viking. We're trying to phase out the ISI and Vikings and go to all Scott air packs. With the Scotts, we still have 4.5s and 2.2s. All of our mutual aid partners only use the 4.5s. And these do present some challenges if you look at a firefighter, if he or she were to become trapped in a building and getting them rescue breathable air. So it's really just trying to start the purchase process and space this out over a several year period. So you'll kind of see that in the overall capital outlay as well. And then the final capital request is the ability to purchase 10 additional sets on top of what we normally purchase throughout the course of the year. Typically, we purchase about 8 sets a year for new personnel. Obviously, we try to continue to redistribute gear when we can, but as we know, not everybody's the same shape and size. So therefore, some gear has to be tailor-made to those individuals. But again, turnout gear has a 10-year lifespan. So it's just something that we just kind of want to continue to stay ahead of that and be able to replace that. I think those 3 capital items total about $126,000. I'll answer any questions that you may have before I move on.
Questions on the capital? Okay.
All right, personnel request. First personnel request is a creation of a new position that's going to be a deputy fire marshal. Chief Bailey currently is a division chief / fire marshal. We have Lieutenant Archer. And then we have a community risk reduction officer who is Karina, but she has been spending about 80% of her time actually doing inspections and not the fire safety education, the community risk reduction side of the house of what her job title actually is. And a lot of that is, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Everybody come up here the last 3 days to talk about growth. It's here, you know it. And so this just enables us to be able to allow Karina to focus on community risk reduction, fire safety education in the school systems, and making those impacts to the kids there with those programs. So the deputy fire marshal position will really enable us to have another person in that office that is able to assist the fire marshal in the various, annual inspections, follow-up inspections, CO inspections, code compliance, and everything. And we also asked for just a ground level fire inspector. Both of those 2 positions are before you. And they kind of go hand in hand, but that's a division, 1,600 plus businesses, and it seems like we're adding new ones every day. I will tell you that many of these businesses have follow-up inspections. It's not uncommon that when our inspectors go out, that people have minor violations that have to have either a 15 or 30-day follow-up. And I think I've spoke with a lot of you all regarding those follow-ups. It's just part of the business. So essentially, if you got 1,600 and 80% of the time you're having to revisit that same group, it puts you doing, well over, probably 3,000 business inspections throughout the year. The same group that we talk about that handles all of these business inspections, plan reviews, is also the same group that conducts all of our arson or suspicious fire investigations. So if we have any suspicious fires of nature, whether it be structure fires, vehicle fires, then they're the ones tasked with investigating and determining cause of origin for those positions. So before I move away from the next ones, I'll try to answer any questions regarding the positions requested for the fire marshal's office.
With your get the total credit for ISO though, they're inspecting those twice a year, right? Trying to.
That's correct. So, you heard the county manager talk about us beginning our ISO evaluation last week. A couple things to think about there. There's the ability for, on the community risk reduction side, for the county to get another 5.5 points on community risk reduction. And so we really want to have that individual focus, and we want to get all 5.5 of those points. We need every point we can so we can continue to try to get that ISO rating down to benefit our citizens here in the county. But to your point, Commissioner Satterfield, you're correct. We have to visit those twice a year. We can count what is considered a company level inspection. And basically, for those of you that are not familiar with that, that is essentially Station 2 personnel are on duty today. We have a form that they can go out and they can go to a business, do that pre-survey, check it off, and that will count. And they submit that. And we have to do that, or we would lose a lot of valuable points on the inspection side when it comes to ISO. But again, with the calls increasing, they may have 10 of those that they're going to try to do that day. They may get 4 done. So, but it's something that we continue. It's just an ongoing annual process throughout the year. Any additional questions? All right. Next is probably the biggest group. You have before you 3 firefighter EMTs and 3 firefighter paramedics. Before I dive into this, I'm going to take the opportunity here. Thank you. Thank you to this board. Thank you to the county manager for the work that we have done to make us competitive in the market. Our men and women, after last Thursday's vote, spoke to them, letting them know that the board approved that raise has been tremendous. And within 24 hours, we filled 2 EMT positions right out of the get-go. And we didn't even advertise. We didn't even have HR change anything yet. So we filled positions by word of mouth. And that's a good thing. And we are competitive now. So with that, before you is a request to bring up the 4th med unit. This county has enjoyed 3 ALS med units for many years, dating back to 1998. But we've, again, the word growth and in and around that 400 corridor, we've gone from having 1 assisted living in this county to 2 that are operating and 2 more under construction. I hate to say it, but they are call generators for us in the EMS business. And it is keeping us busy. And with that, with both 3 of the 4 being on that 400 corridor, we're seeing some pretty extended times for med units. Our med unit response time has increased to 9.25. So we're about 9 minutes 25 seconds on our average response. We're still getting a first unit on scene in just a little over 8 minutes, but our national average is 8 minutes for EMS unit. So we continue to try to have that 8 minute as our target goal. And really, we're able to break that down even more so because we broke it down strictly by the med units. Med 2 has the lowest response time of any med unit in the county. It's our highest density area, but they average 8 minutes, 42 seconds. So what happens next is if Med 2 goes on a call, Med 1's territory just got substantially bigger. They now have their own territory, which is here in town and the outliers, and then everything to the Forsyth County line, both ways. So their average response time has went to 10 minutes and 13 seconds. As you know, we brought Station 8 on board. It helps when Med 1 and Med 2 both go on calls. We rotate units in. We continue a long-standing tradition of doing that. But Med 8 has an overall response time of 14 minutes and 7 seconds to calls. And we still utilize Med 6 to serve our Big Canoe community and everything there. But that is what we refer to as a swing unit. They staff an engine. If it's a med call inside Big Canoe, they take the med unit and the engine comes down. So it's just kind of a little footnote to that. So with the 4th med unit, we would look at trying to put it in the Station 7 area. That would help take some of the call volume off of Station 1, also off of Station 2, but also give us a unit that's a little quicker into that 400 corridor when Med 2's out on a call. And recently, we are experiencing significant delays getting out of the hospital. We had a med unit yesterday that transported to the hospital, and they had what's referred to as a wall time of 3 hours. So we typically, from the time of dispatch to the time the med unit's back in service, on average is just under 2 hours that unit's gone out of the county. And that's just normal, set aside to COVID. But right now, we're seeing upwards of that unit was gone just under 5 hours yesterday. And they had to hold a patient in their unit for over 3 hours. So we're seeing some significant impacts, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those impacts as we dive into our EMS budget here in a little bit. But again,
Will the hospital coming online at the end of 400 reduce those times over the long haul?
I think at some point, yes, you can see some reduction. A lot of it has to
At the end
do.
of COVID will really reduce.
Mhm.
That's
We
the
put-
problem.
Amen to that.
That's the
Jeremy.
problem.
Amen to that.
There's no place to put them, so they're leaving them in the med unit.
Yeah.
And you see up to 5 hours in some of them,
If they set up
but that's not gonna be permanent.
a triage.
It's my
tent,
understanding that the triage tent hospital is up. I think it's a matter of staffing.
I know they sent some
And this
National Guard.
National Guard is supposed to be
Yeah.
coming online. I
we
just
send
haven't
some
heard
out
what the
state,
timetable
too.
is.
Let me ask you a question in reference to med units.
Yes, sir.
Are we not, I know you said that you transfer over to Med 6 when you get a call in Big Canoe, but we had some conversation, you and I and David, about having 3 people at each one of those stations. Is that not what we're doing?
We don't have 3 people at each of those stations. If we're fully staffed and we
Because
still have a
had
few.
4, we had extra, we had the manpower when we talked about it to have 3 at Station 8 and 3 at Station 6.
Correct. So
Is that not what we're doing?
we don't, just because we have 3 that are out on FMLA right now.
But when we're fully staffed,
Well,
is that what we're doing?
correct. If
Okay.
you're fully staffed, you will have exactly what you're talking about.
Just want to
Correct.
make sure.
Correct.
Chief, I'm going to interrupt. Sorry, Billy.
No, you're fine.
We got the call numbers yet? I know that large assistant or family, whatever it's called on the,
Dawson Manor.
yeah, Dawson Manor, excuse me. What kind of numbers are we seeing there yet?
Right now, we're seeing about 1 to 2 calls a day from that location, but again, they're still not at full capacity.
How many people they got there?
Right now, they're only about 25% capacity.
So they hadn't put anybody in the homes yet or
The
anything?
And
homes
so-
are 100% occupied.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, they are.
Now, and we
Homes
kind
are
of
100%
looked at
occupied, and the assisted living piece that they have under construction now, when I was talking to the owner of it, I think he said 45-50%.
They're increased pretty quick.
correct. And I think it's
Thank you.
important to note, the homes are more of, those are independent
Yeah.
personnel. I mean, they still have the ability to kind of take care of themselves, whereas the assisted living side, they have a few more medical challenges that we have to deal with, but yes. Any questions on the
That means
request?
we have to buy another ambulance if we're standing up a whole nother unit too.
Well, we currently have enough units to be able to do it now. Where we're finding ourselves, and again, I'll kind of share some information. The board approved the 2 med units back in April. We're very appreciative of that. But because of COVID, again, we probably will not see those med units until May of next year. So we're having to continue, and Shannon and Scotty do a fantastic job of keeping those units on the road. But 3 of them are over 130,000. 2 of them are, or 3 of them are over 150,000. 2 of them are over 130,000. So they got some mileage on them. So, but they just have vehicle repairs. That's just part of it.
And you mentioned that. So if those 2 come in May and we order another one next year, it takes 12 months or better.
If you, yeah, if you told me right now, when I went out there and did the pre-bid, if the board said, Chief, go buy another med unit right now, it will likely be about 15 months before that med unit hits this county.
One good day, we don't have to pay for it for 15 months.
All right, one other thing in reference to personnel that I want you to do some study on. And we've talked a little bit about peak time responses.
10 to 10.
So, which is a 12-hour truck versus a 24-hour truck, which is half the cost, especially in personnel. So can you provide this board with some numbers in reference to that as well?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I know you and I have spoke about a peak truck. And our peak call volume is 10A, 10P. And really our heavy call volume days are Tuesday through Saturday. As far as that goes. Peak trucks, we kind of reached out to some of our part-timers, trying to get a feel for 12-hour shifts. Some like it, some don't. We struggle now with our part-timers, just getting them.
Well, it'd be full-time. I mean, because if he's working 12 hours a day and you worked at least 3 days, you'd be a full-time employee.
And I think
We
if
could look at it
we're,
both ways, not just part-time, but we could look at it as full-time. I'm just saying if we have a 12-hour peak cycle every day of the week versus, we don't need that 4th med unit the whole 24-hour period. We could accomplish what you need to accomplish and have that med unit available without the expense to the taxpayer of downtime. What I'm
Yeah,
trying to put together.
I think if we're still looking at a cross-trained firefighter, paramedic, and a firefighter EMT, I think most of them are used to a traditional 24/48 schedule. So I'm not sure what the market's going to look like to even
Well, I think it's worth
offer. a
investigating and see what
full-time.
the market can show us.
I mean, we could, obviously, if it's the desire of the board and it's approved that way, we could market it and send it out. I won't have the answer until we send it out.
Right.
And,
But I
and,
mean, I think you've got people out there that have been in the business a long time that wouldn't mind a 12-hour day. Not being away from their family
there may be,
the whole time.
that's correct.
I'm just trying to look at the possibility of answering a problem that you have in the most economical fashion for the taxpayer.
And I've mentioned the option too, and again, I'm not an expert in this situation, but I know a lot of other communities are bringing in the private. And I know we have a reluctancy to do that because of level of service, but if we're in a short-term COVID situation to backfill or fill gaps, I mean, I think I even told you, if we have a moment where we have nobody to respond versus a contract where a private can come in and at least respond, might not be as high level of service, but at least you got somebody to respond, then maybe even a short-term gap could be something that we look at. I mean, we've said it multiple times, and nobody's ever shown me anything.
So we've talked about that. We have mutual aid with all of our surrounding.
But I'm talking about,
And that's the same short-term gap. You're gonna probably not find many private ambulance services that are going to want to sign up for a standby contract. Obviously, if it's the desire of the board, we can work with procurement, we can push one out. But they're gonna want to run calls because that's how they get paid. And they're not want to go on standby unless there's a subsidy that
Well,
augments.
I think what he's talking about, if we did that, they would be getting something.
I mean,
We would be paying them for that.
Yeah, I'm
That'd be a contract.
I'm just a data guy. And I mean, we've talked about it, but nobody's ever taken it
For your,
to the
as
next.
as
one, I
the
guess.
chief talked about response time, though, I think your response time is gonna be probably worse because, yeah, they're gonna say they're gonna run your emergency calls, but they wanna make money, so they're gonna be running non-emergency calls, taking people to the doctor's office, taking them home, taking them to cath lab, taking dialysis. And you're gonna call for them, they're gonna say, well, we got a 20-minute response time because we're patient loaded right now. And you're gonna see that because you see it on the news all the time. That's what happened in some other counties around it.
How many,
At the
They
same
would-
time, we hear him say there's times where we have nobody in the community, no ambulances.
Well, yeah,
And
but you-
that's what worries me. I'd rather have a plan B to come in, even if it is longer response time, than having nobody per your comments in the
It
past.
occurs multiple times during the week.
I said,
At your
one
levels
truck,
of-
they're
how
probably.
many mutual aid calls are being run in this county by counties surrounding us?
So I ran the data for us this year as of June 1 was when I ran the data. We had requested mutual aid med units 55 times. And we had sent 28 mutual aid requests. So we went to another county 28 times.
So we've had 28 times and we've asked for 55.
Correct.
So the comment of
But
downtime.
Let me
is
ask you
not
this
accurate.
now. If, is that actually 55 times that we had a call waiting for them to come to, or we just put them on standby?
No, that was them coming to a call was
Okay.
55 times.
All
We're well over probably more than half of the day, half of the year.
But your downtime, you talking about downtime, sometimes your downtime, you don't run anything, you're just lucky, you got a horseshoe that's hoping,
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't get that call, you're saying, please, nobody call. And that dispatch is sitting there and said, phone don't ring.
But when we've had the comment in the past, and I've had citizens comment, we have nobody to respond in the county, because that's been said, and that's been said to try to support getting extra things, people or whatever it may be. Reality is, we do have somebody to respond.
On the fire truck, yeah.
Correct.
No,
Yeah,
I
we
mean, an
do.
ambulance, you're saying mutual aid, an ambulance from another county is coming or something. So
Well, we have
that's-
the ability too to transfer from fire to EMS internally as well.
Correct.
'Cause we
Correct.
have med units at Station 7 and at Station 3 normally.
No longer have one at 3.
Okay, well, we used to have one at 3.
Yes.
We have one at 7. And so they have the ability. And all of our fire personnel also have the ability to take care of the patient pending an ambulance from wherever.
That is correct. Every.
So
every
they're
fire
not,
station-
it's not like Sharon's laying there and nothing's being done to Sharon. Somebody's caring for her until somebody comes to transport her.
It's the transport capability. That's the component that you're missing.
That may be elongated from over time, yes.
Correct. That is correct.
So that's the reason I go back to what we talked about before, when I talked about peak time.
Right.
So I'd like to see those numbers.
Well, I think we can do a better job of communicating, because right now there's citizens that are saying, well, I just heard the chief saying we have nobody to respond. Which has been
No.
stated, and that's not. we
That's
do
not the
have
case.
people.
And I think that comment is probably taken out of context.
Yeah, that's not the
Yeah.
case. We are putting bodies on the scene on every call. Do what we've done over the years to have qualified, trained people at every station that we man.
Right.
So there are qualified people to take care of your needs with
Transportation.
medication, with cardiac monitoring, all the stuff that you would need if that med unit was sitting in the yard versus the fire truck sitting in the yard.
We have a 8-minute, 25-second is our average first unit on scene
Yeah.
to a call
Okay.
across the county.
So basically, we have what you're talking about with our mutual aid agreement. We already have a contract service to run when we don't have anything. I mean, that's basically how you can look at it.
Correct. We use Lumpkin, Pickens, Gilmer, and Forsyth. It just really dependent on where the call is at as
What the
to which
location is.
agency that we call.
Because all the time you'll see and hear, you're listening or watching or looking at, because I get the daily log too, every day from 911. And so I can see if Pickens County picked up a call for us, or we picked up a call for Pickens
Mhm.
County and Big Canoe or something along those lines.
Mhm.
So yeah, there is a backup. There is a backup plan included with the backup plan that we already supply of putting a person to take care of you until that backup transport. Really, it's a transport thing is what it boils
That's
down to.
right.
That's correct.
That's right.
Not,
It's the
not,
transport.
not care. It's
Right.
transport.
I think that's the way that the community is taking.
And somebody's gonna be on the way.
Yes,
If you call, they're coming
somebody's gonna
and
be
they're
there,
qualified.
and they're qualified.
Correct.
Yeah. So
we've been
that's-
doing that
You
for
need to
years.
tell your whoever's calling.
Yeah.
And
I think
that
people
will
just heard
relax
that there's
them.
no
Yeah.
ambulances available, period, and that's
Yeah.
not really the case.
Yeah, that
That's
gets
right.
taken, that, as the chief
It
said,
just
that gets taken out of
misinformation.
context when
Yeah.
somebody says, well, for the last hour, we've not had a medic. Well, for
Right.
the last hour, we've had qualified people who can take care of you every second of that day.
Yes, that's right.
Go ahead.
Excellent.
Any additional questions on those personnel requests? The final personnel request is we've had a frozen captain's position in training. We're asking to convert, unfreeze, and have that as a part-time training lieutenant. That position would be eligible for 29 hours a week, keeping us in compliance with the Affordable Care Act. And really kind of help take a little bit of the overall record keeping maintenance side of that portion of training, and just kind of helping each of the three shifts coordinate their daily training and kind of moving that forward. And really, we see some big benefits on this as far as going back to ISO again. For ISO, it seems like it changes quite often, but you've got to have X amount of hours in certain categories for ISO, but totaling that up is well over 260 hours worth of just fire training that the personnel have to have, and trying to coordinate that for 70 employees at the division chief level, along with the other tasks that they're running, just would help to be able to take a little bit of that and reduce the span of control. And I'll answer any questions.
Questions on that reference to personnel requests? And you did have a couple of rate increases. You want to talk about
Yep.
those?
I just flipped over to it. I am asking for it's one rate request change. The
Yeah, one
board
of them
fixed
you-
one
yeah.
up, board fixed one last week.
Okay.
So I had communicated with Natalie to share with the chairman that I wouldn't be presenting that one. But I do have one, and that is our current fire department administrative assistant, Ms. Phillips. I think if you asked any department in this county, they will tell you they work hand in hand with Ms. Phillips. She is truly the backbone of our organization, helping us with our human resources side of funding, managing money. She's excellent when it comes to working with our EMS biller. She has a background in EMS coding and billing. She continues to take ongoing educational classes, and we really just want to make her competitive with surrounding counties administrative assistants and try to move her up. And so that request is before you. We've kept her busy this year because we added another thing that's called COVID exposure tracking. And we're averaging about 6 of those a day right now. So anytime I continue to add something to her plate, she doesn't just complete the task, she excels in the task. And we want to be able to, take care of her. She really performs more, her title's an administrative assistant. She really performs at an executive level. And we're very, very thankful to have her. I'll answer any questions that you all may have.
What did you say you did away with? Did you say that there was one that you,
That was the training, that was a personnel. Oh, that was for the.
the
fire marshal.
part-time?
that
Okay,
was a fire
okay, so that one's out.
Yep.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
okay.
I'll answer any questions.
Question?
All right, I'll jump into the 3,500 fire budget. I guess the first item for me to discuss in this is we have requested 95,000 in our 35,511,300. That will be overtime. This is a little bit of a moving target. We're averaging about $4,200 bi-weekly right now in overtime and this 3,500 budget. A lot of that can be attributed to COVID. We've stood up vaccine sites multiple times throughout the first half of this year. Prior to walking in here, we've been dealing with a search and rescue this morning that we've had to get some personnel out to be able to assist with that. It could be these hurricanes that continue to drop in. It's very, very difficult to stand before you and to be able to predict the level of attrition, what the year is going to hold. We never thought we'd be in a pandemic as long as we are now, having to spend the money that we have. But, we're trying to keep those level of services up and staffing. And we've been hit, exceptionally hard with the COVID bug. That hasn't helped us and done us any favors. So we are asking for 95,000 in that overtime budget. That's still substantially less if you use the trend model of roughly 4,200 on an average. But again, I can tell you that as I speak to you right now, we are out of funding in our current 3,500 overtime budget today.
Well, the thing about that is we always have the flexibility to work on that throughout the year. So, that's something that, if we see as an issue or finance sees it's going to change, we have the ability to make adjustments to that throughout the year. And there's a standard amount I know that we always know we're going to have because you have working at
Short checks,
24,
long
48. There's going to be a standard amount that can be definitely penciled in based on the number of people that you have. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll get all the way up to that amount because they may take a vacation day that throws them out of that overtime on their 5-day pay period. But there is a pretty easy standard amount penciled into that right there. So we can always make adjustments to that.
And fill in some of those vacancies, as we've talked
That'll
in the
help.
past, increasing the
has helped.
pay will fill
Yes.
those vacancies that should
Keep-
offset that.
Yeah, without having to, sometimes he tries to fill them, I know, with part-timers, but that's not always easy to do.
It's a
No,
challenge.
another story that we need to discuss at
That's
some
a,
point.
that's
in
a,
time, but
that's
not
a
today.
conversation that we will definitely have to have in the near future.
Yeah,
So,
not
yes.
today. All right, go ahead.
The next one I'll move down is vehicle repair maintenance. That's going to be 3,500, 522, 201. With the bringing on of the ladder truck, every year, all of the ground ladders on apparatus have to be tested. This is an ISO requirement and also a safety requirement. We're tickled to death to have the ladder truck, but it brings about the same number of ladders that 3 engines would have on it. So there's some additional costs there that will have to increase in our ladder testing. The other part is we will have to use a secondary vendor to do the maintenance work. J Walls typically does all of our diesel mechanic stuff. It's outsourced, but J Walls will not be able to service the ladder truck. So we will actually have to rely on 10-8 Fire, who we purchased the ladder truck from, to perform our ongoing maintenance. And this is somewhat still of a moving target because we haven't had a maintenance service done yet. So I didn't have data to be able to truly look at to say, hey, it's cost us to do an oil change on the ladder truck, it costs us $1,500. So it was still somewhat new in that and just really didn't have any data to move forward with it. I'll answer any questions on that one.
Let's move on through the whole
right.
department and then they can ask you some questions.
Perfect. The next one is property maintenance burn building, should be right there below that. We purchased 10 of what's called the Paginite burn panels, and that is to keep our live fire training room up and going. Those panels cost $231 a piece. The shipping is where we see a pretty high increase and shipping because it does require a tailgate. And in that, we're actually just requesting $3,067. That covers the 10 panels along with a lift gate truck shipping there. And that is it for 3,500. Everything else we
A little
agree.
bit, go down to travel. Went up $5,000.
I think we basically, when finance sent their recommendation, we concur with their recommendation.
Talk a little bit about what are we going to be doing in travel that's $5,000 different from what was requested in 2021.
Their original budget for 2021 was $5,000 to travel.
Okay, so that's been moved around for other things. Okay. Gotcha. All right, go ahead.
Let's see, the next one is 3501. That's the fire marshal's office. And we concur with the recommendations by finance.
Okay.
Staying on track, we'll move to 3630 EMS budget. Again, we kind of alluded to it when we started talking about med units. We have 5 current med units with the higher mileage. We're still seeing some ongoing maintenance costs there. We're averaging about $3,400 a month on those maintenance costs. Again, it's we're one turbo going down, $4,000. And that happened to us, I think 2 or 3 Decembers ago. We were rolling into December. We had about $20,000 in this line item. And I said, well, we're going to be able to turn back in some money this year. And December 1, a turbo went down, and December 17th, another turbo went down. And there we were, $8,000 for 2 turbos right there. So again, as the vehicles get older, they just require a little bit more TLC, but Shannon and Scotty do a fantastic job.
So we're looking, did you say we're get the 2 new ones that we've already ordered in May, maybe of next year?
May.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that'll
Yes,
help
sir.
you a little.
It will. It will.
Also, have you talked to Shannon or see what, I know I've seen, just seeing stuff and reading on the diesels versus the gasoline. I think some of them are going back towards the gasoline now
So Hall
because
County
of the
just
DEF
bought,
fluid and the turbo issue. So
Hall County just bought 10 gas med units. So before I give an opinion, I'd kind of
keep
like
in
to
touch with them
see.
and see how
Yeah,
they're
I
running
really,
out.
and I stay in touch with Chief Armstrong in Hall, kind of watching to see how these gas med units are doing. And you're 100% correct. I think any diesel mechanic will tell you a lot of the up cost in these diesel engines is the DEF side of it. It's terrible. It so, it's very, very difficult to predict, and it causes a lot of other issues down the road. And so we are beginning to see a trend of departments with the med unit side transitioning over to a gas burning vehicle, same chassis and everything, just instead of diesel, it would just be gas
I think in
burning.
the long run, like Chairman said, we talked about it this, and you know that emergency services, they crank them up cold, run them hard as they can, and shut them off hot. And that's not diesel's made to run, continually run and cool down before you shut it off. So it's, yeah, I'd like to let you look into the gasolines.
And I'm not sure when they're taking delivery, but I think they have 8 to 10
Yeah, several.
because they had several out there.
Or just make sure you change. You don't put gas in diesel or diesel on the gas.
We've done that,
I've done that myself.
I thought the nozzles were different.
Yeah, but you can sure put a gas nozzle in a diesel truck, believe me.
Oh.
You don't know that from personal experience, do you?
You can also put DEF fluid in a diesel tank.
And that's
Oh, my
occurred
goodness.
as well.
I didn't do
So,
that.
Correct.
I didn't do that.
Yeah.
sounds like a
not
guilty
you.
party there. I'm just gonna say.
All right.
Let's see, so the next line item is equipment rental in 3630-522-320. We've seen a pretty significant increase in our medical air gas this past year. Truly, the amount requested before you, we're spending $775 to $825 a month. If you just take that simple number, you times it basically by 12, it's going to put you at that $9,600 that we're asking for to be able, the medical gas that we're using, that's the oxygen that we're giving to our patients in the field. Next is general supplies. This is our medical supplies, 3630-531-100. Obviously, we're seeing about a 15% increase in our call volume here in the county. But the other thing that we've seen this year, and Melissa Hall, she could attest to this, is that medical supplies have gone up. Probably one of the biggest hits we took this year, the thing that we used the most of is exam gloves. We saw a 65% increase in the cost of those exam gloves. And it's difficult to, we just got notification a few weeks ago that electrodes went up. And that's anytime we put somebody on a heart monitor, that's a minimum of 12 electrodes. So it's, we're just seeing with the current pandemic, medical supplies and medical costs are just astronomical.
We
And
got a
while
little
we
bit of
are,
inflation going on too.
and when we have a lot of contracts on this stuff, but we get notifications that they're going up. So this is somewhat of a moving target. I wish that I had a crystal ball that we could look at and I could say this is a solid number. But it's really between the increase in call volume and the costs that are attributed due to the pandemic. We're just trying to find a happy medium there.
I spoke, I know 2 years ago, I spoke to the chairman about this, and I'd love to see us as a county look into getting a supply building that benefits all departments and buy it bulk. We can buy a case pallet load of gloves or stuff that the sheriff needs, or the road department or public works, cleaning supplies. I mean, we're getting big enough now. We need a supply building that we can buy this stuff in bulk, 55-gallon drums, pallet loads, and keep
And the
keep
pandemic,
this stuff.
the pandemic has
For all
presented
the
some
departments.
challenges in medical supplies because we're seeing significant delays and just getting supplies at times. So you're correct. That would definitely be able to address that because you could purchase in those downtimes. We're not in these pandemics, but the flip side that we've been dealing with as well is just sometimes our current vendors under contract, they don't have it. So then we're working with other vendors that are not in contract and we're having to pay a higher price for some of these supplies to continue providing.
All we need is a small little metal, I mean, not real small, but enough where somebody could back a truck into and load up a 55-gallon drum. I mean, buying soaps and whatever. And I think we need to look at that, try to find a place to put it.
We will have it's not a big building, but we'll have the health department, old building come back online for admin more. Once we build that new building.
They said to do that.
Police shop,
Police shop.
yeah. We need a better building than what's up there. For that. We could put a building.
Yeah.
The final request that we had in 3630 is uniforms. Again, we've seen an increase that's passed on to us from the uniform vendor in Nomex, and that is the blue uniforms that you see, our field operations personnel. That's the station compliant uniforms. And really that request is just simply to pass on that cost and augment it. And with that, that is it. I had nothing to discuss in the 3920, which is EMA. I'll answer any questions but the board may. have.
Any further questions for Chief Thompson on anything that he's talked about? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
All right, move on to Family Connection. So they've been thinking about that.
I read an article this morning that was imminent.
You want to start with admin or operating? Or is it
Say that again.
Family Connection operating and Family Connection operating budget? You have two different types?
Sure.
Okay. Which one do you want to start with?
We'll start with, well, first of all, I'm Rebecca Bliss, Coordinator for Family Connection. Sorry, you caught me off guard. I had a speech prepared in my head and you messed me up. I'm sorry.
I know how that feels. It just goes,
Wait a minute.
vanishes, doesn't
I
it?
did. I had this. I had this.
I get it. I understand.
There's actually three things that I'd like to talk about. The good thing is Family Connection, we've always been told that we're kind of a special case because we're so largely grant funded. And we've been very thankful that for the last 10 years that our budget has remained pretty much well. We've been good on our budget. There's been two major changes this year. And those are the two major changes to our budget this year. And those are the things that I'd like to bring attention to at this time. So in March of 2021, I was named Family Connection Coordinator, replacing Nancy Stites. And 3 days later, we found out that we would be losing a grant, which in the past has attributed to about 75% of our income.
Mhm. I remember
Easily.
that.
So for the last 10 years, we have received a grant from DBHDD for approximately about $145,000 a year. That grant was to present an underage drinking prevention initiative to Dawson County. Unfortunately, that grant will be ending September 30th of 2021. Some of the things that we will be losing because of that grant are obviously the messages that we will be sending to the community regarding underage drinking. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to fund our prevention specialist position. And unfortunately, there are two items on our general fund account that were previously subsidized by that grant. The first being currently that grant subsidizes about $11,000 worth of salary expenses for the Family Connection Coordinator, and currently subsidizes about $7,000 worth of regular operating expenses for Family Connection. Being presented with this challenge as a new coordinator, I started sitting down and looking at our funds and have spoken with Natalie. We currently have enough funds in we have two general fund accounts. One general fund account is a contributor or donating account that we get from community and other business leaders. And then we have a general fund account that is subsidized by the Board of Commissioners. The general fund account that is mainly contributions and donations, we would be able to subsidize the current Family Connection deficit for approximately 2 years at status quo, which presents what are our other options. Of course, if there's any grant opportunities that come up, we would be more than happy to apply for those positions. We have applied for one grant. Unfortunately, we were not awarded the grant. But as one of the things I'm doing as a coordinator, as a new coordinator, is I'm coming in and I hope to have a 3 to 5 year plan shortly. And once that 3 to 5 year plan comes into place, I'll be able to apply that to grant application process as they become available. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, a lot of the grant opportunities because of COVID are just changing. Substance abuse is no longer a major focus, but mental wellness is. Family Connection has already kind of changed our strategies. And I do believe that funding will come down the pipeline in the future, but there's just a big change, thanks to 2020. I think we have things. So as far as Family Connections budget is concerned, there are two marked differences in our budget this year compared to years in the past.
One is that with the grant, with the loss of our DBHDD funded grant, you notice that there is nothing budgeted in 2022 for our OPS account or our DBHDD funded account, which is 7636. In response to that, we are asking for an increase in our 7682 budget account, which is the generally funded, our general funds that are funded by Board of Commissioners in the amount of $20,000. And that will be for subsidizing $11,000 towards salary for the coordinator and $8,000 in regular operating expenses. Those are the major changes that we have had. I know, Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned our other account that we have a budget for is what we affectionately know as our DHS account. That is the 7630. Everything on that is pretty much what status quo as it hasn't been in the past. We receive a grant from Georgia Family Connection. And that grant for the next year will be for $48,000. I believe we've already signed a contract for that grant. And that will cover salary for the coordinator and some of our regular operating expenses for Family Connection. So most of our programs are all grant funded. OPS, which was our DBHDD granted grant, and DHS are the only two that we had that covered salary and regular operating costs. So that's about all I have. So if anybody has any questions.
Questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hey, Sheriff, you're next. Come on up. We'll say the sheriff sent you out an explanation of some of the stuff that he is requesting in his budget prior to coming today. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to look at some of that. Due to some of the time constraints we got going on. Go ahead.
Well, good morning, board. I'll start wherever y'all want. Do you want to do line items first and then the capital, or
Whichever way you want to go. We'll let you go.
I'll tell you, we could go through line items first, if that'll work with everyone. What I've kind of done is broke out some of the things that there's a difference between the recommended. So obviously, if you have any questions about the others, please let me know. Looking at 3,300 sheriff component. And that consists of our administration, our patrol, and our investigations. The only thing that we have here, we are requesting this year the addition of the holiday pay. What we've done typically we've paid holiday pay throughout the years, but we've had to find it in other areas to fund that. So we are asking for that. As well as our small equipment. We have an increase in our small equipment. The recommended are 20, we're requesting 35,000. We are beginning to replace some of the bulletproof vests. And those typically rated, I think some of the last ones we bought were rated about 7 years. They're typically between 5 and 7 years. We expect to replace 18 of them this year or in 2022. And then we want to allot for about 6 of them for movement in our jail, things of that nature. Once they get out of the academy, we can try to issue them for extra duty employment, for transports, for different things like that that they may be responsible for. Vests are roughly in the area of $800. So we are looking at replacing approximately 24 of those in 22. The vest alone are accounting for approximately 17,000 of that line item. So again, we would request to raise our small equipment from the 20,000 recommended to the 35,000. The next one I want to talk about is the investigative contingencies fund. The recommended 22 is 15,000. We're requesting 25,000. What we're asking for is basically it's an early warning system. It's a computer system that will help identify and track use of force incidents, board crashes, pursuits, other type categories. It'll also assist with our training and certification. Basically, it's an alert system for our command staff, our supervisors. If we have an employee that maybe is lacking in a certain area, if they have some excessive or they have numerous use of force incidents, it helps us to identify these possible problems and address those before they become problems, so to speak. So we're asking for an increase there. The cost of this program is approximately $8,000 annually. So we're requesting that over our the $15,000 recommended.
That's computer based?
Yes, sir. And that's all I had for the 3,300, unless the board may have some questions.
Questions?
What did you say this covered? You said patrol, investigations, and something else.
Admin.
Okay.
All right, next one we'll look at, I guess, is the K9 3322. There's no recommended or there's no requested changes in it. We feel like the recommended numbers be sufficient for that.
Okay.
Inner jail 3326. What we're asking for there is again, the increase of the holiday pay is roughly around $71,000. Again, we've been paying that throughout the years, but we haven't been funded for that. We've been having to find it in other areas. I do want to put on the board's radar, the GCIC unit. I know some of us have talked about it collectively. Once 911 leaves, once they exit our facility, right now they're wearing a lot of hats. So they're doing our GCIC entry. They're doing our audits, they're doing our file maintenance, all these things that they're currently doing for us, we're going to have to retain in-house. That's by statute. So it would be our desire to kind of kill two birds with one stone. We're looking at hopefully having a 24-hour service at the front of our jail. There's a need for it now, but not only would they handle the walk-in traffic, bonding folks out at night, things of that nature, they would also be responsible for maintenance of our GCIC unit. So we do anticipate that'll be because right now we've got all of our 911 operators doing it. So they're all throwing in, they're all managing this. But at that point in time that we do move 911 out, we will have to make provisions for that. We are requesting an inmate medical. We're requesting to go to 24/7 service. That's going to increase us up to approximately from the recommended 410,000 to 565,000. Basically, that'll give us medical there 24 hours a day. If we have inmates come in or somebody arrested coming in under the influence, they can be there to monitor them. They can be there to complete physicals in a timely manner. They'll be there to respond to emergencies. Right now, we've got 12-hour coverage. So at nighttime, the detention officers are kind of there on their own. Obviously, we make good use of fire and EMS. They come to our aid quite a bit, but we'll have this would give us or afford us the ability to have medical there 24/7, as well as to administer medications, diabetics, things of that nature. It would be a nurse, right? I'm not sure about the practitioner part of it. We need to know it is a certified nurse.
Sheriff, I know you have a medical control, but a doctor, but going on Vicky's question too is, because I've seen some, and then I've worked with guys that worked at the jail, paramedics and things like that.
Right.
Could they contact your all's doc and see if paramedic could do that or something? I mean, as far
I'm
as a
sure they
part-time
would.
job.
I'm sure they would welcome that with open arms.
'Cause I know there's several detention areas around, around other counties, they use paramedics sometimes
Right.
as a part-time job that works at the jail. Because they can administer medications and stuff too.
I hate to say, I don't know exactly what their requirements are for it. But I know they're like the rest of us. They hurt fine folks right now.
Mhm.
So.
Okay.
Well, we certainly inquire into it. The next thing we're requesting for is property repairs and maintenance. There's a recommended 140,000. Your paper may say 200,000. Went back and reviewed that. We want to mark that down to 175,000 requested. The reason we're requesting that, obviously, the board's approved in years past. I believe that all of our heating and air units have been replaced and they're updated. There is a control center in the jail. It's all computer regulated. It has reached its end of life or nearing it. We've got a quote to repair that at roughly approximately $16,300. We do know that our Muffin Monster is coming due. We don't know when, but we know it's about time for it to. And that's roughly around 15,500 purchased and installed. Our brink locking systems, the mechanisms throughout the jail, they're failing. I mean, we're 14 years old now, and so they're beginning to fail on us. We are replacing those. Those are approximately $1,000 each. Talking with our jail command as well as with maintenance, we're looking at replacing potentially 6 of them soon. And replace the broken air conditioning unit at the Butler building to roughly $7,200 quote. But that's our requested over the recommended. Again, not 200,000, but 175,000. And that's it for 3326 that we have on ours.
Questions on that department?
3350, our school resource officers, we do not have any requested changes with it. Our 3300 school traffic management and our 3353 special event officers, no requested changes to it. 3360 sheriff services. You know, one thing when I talked about the holiday pay in the other ones, it don't affect everyone. Just like court services, if it's a holiday, they're off. So they get to pay day off. Certain ones in admin get the day off, and so forth. Even our CID technically gets the day off unless they get called in. So sheriff services, no change to the salary in it. The only requested change that we're submitting under court services is small equipment. It's recommended 1,000. We're requesting 24,000. And basically what that will take care of is the walk-through metal detectors. Currently, there's one of the units is 15 years old, one of them is 10 years old. And I don't remember, it may be our most current one was actually moved from the jail. When it was originally built, we had a metal detector there. It was moved over here. The cost for the metal detector alone is $2,600, $2,657. And the X-ray machine itself, the one that we have in service downstairs, is failing. My understanding of it, they have to keep the thing powered up 24/7. When they shut it off, it's highly unlikely to get turned back on, or highly likely not to get turned back on. So the estimated cost for maintenance on it was $6,000. So if it does fail, and we're looking at investing $7,000 in it, with the total cost of it being approximately $20,000, with it being so old, I just think it'd make good sense just to go ahead and replace it. And what we would do, we would transition out the old one, move the current one over as a backup, and then utilize the new one. So in that, we're just asking for 24,000 instead of the recommended 1,000, and that will take care of the walk-through metal detector as well as the X-ray machine. That's all I have for the 3360.
Questions?
All right, E911, again, we're requesting a change of for holiday pay, $29,171. Under property repairs and maintenance, we're good with that. We think we can operate within that. Radio system costs for counterpart. That's the only change that we were presenting for the E911, the request for the holiday pay.
Okay. Questions? Questions? Okay.
All right, I guess we can move into the capital request. No, do y'all have the most updated recent one that shows with the #1 request being the Solacom system? Or does y'all show roof on the kennel and K9 unit?
So mine shows solar column.
Okay, good. Wanted to make sure that you had the most recent one. That's that would be our most urgent need. This is our 911 operating system. Obviously, as the folks call in on 911, they have to have a way of recording it, logging it. This is all the software. I'd like to tell you I'm an expert in it, but I'm by no means one. But from my understanding of it, from what I've been told, this is what actually runs our 911 center. It takes the place of answering the phone and writing everything on a sheet of paper and handing it to someone else. It is failing. One thing that we did learn, and we made for sure of it, this will transfer to the new 911 center when it gets built. So it has potentially it has a 10-year maintenance plan included. This last updated version was implemented in 2002, which put it about a 10 years well. So we anticipate that once we upgrade on this, it should be good for another 10 years. We hope. This quote will also put in 2 laptop units, which will basically serve as additional consoles for our 911 coordinator and administrator and co-administrator. Basically, they could sit at their desk and answer 911 calls if the need arises. Any questions over that?
Question?
Our next priority would be right year, obviously 2021. Enlightened us on a few things, although we didn't have any direct threats toward Dawson County. We were requested assistance by some of our neighbors. And obviously we would reciprocate on that should the need arise, but we find ourselves without any need of right year. We've been fortunate over the years to be able to provide for our officers with what they need. But thankfully, Dawson County just hasn't been in a position where we've needed that type of thing. So what we're requesting is right year to be provided at a rough cost of $120,000, $118,364. Basically, this will provide a helmet, face shield, neck protection, arm, leg, torso protection, and so forth, our batons, everything that we would need to respond to an incident of civil unrest. We did begin inquiring when everything kind of went south, but nothing was to be found. Anything that was on the shelf was gone. And we were told it would be months backlog before we would be able to get on anything. So we'd like to get that in place just to be prepared for the next one. Any questions I could answer over that?
Questions?
The next is TASER. Obviously, we implement TASERs. We utilize them here at Dawson County. This is something we've kind of been touring back and forth with for some time. TASER does a program now. And I know some of you may be familiar with that. Some of you may not. At one time, we were buying a TASER and we were using it like we were cars. We just run it till the wheels fell off. But TASER, like anything else, has changed. Now they update things, they upgrade things. And when they do, one thing that's beneficial about TASER is their liability and legal protection. They will come to your aid should something unfortunate happen with a TASER application. However, if we're outside, if we're using a weapon that's not covered, that's not current, that's no longer serviceable, they back away from it. And whether that's a money thing or whether that's a usability thing, I'm not 100% certain. But anyways, this program will allow us, one, to keep the most current TASERs in. It will provide us with the training cartridges, with the duty cartridges. It will provide us with the training of the instructors, the holsters, the batteries, the docking stations. It's a complete package. So simply put, if we have a TASER that goes down, that gets outdated, we send it back to TASER and they replace it for us. So it's just an all-inclusive program that would really be beneficial for us, understanding that we just can't use them. We just can't keep one in service for years and years and years like we used to. So at an annual cost of roughly $33,000 would be for 2022.
What do they do with the old ones? They refurb them or something like that? You turn them back. You turn in the old ones and they refurbish them or something?
If it's a current one, they would. Yes, they'll repair and replace.
That would be an ongoing contract.
Yes, sir.
Do you have to use tasers a lot?
Thankfully, not a lot, but we have. And it's one of the most beneficial tools that truly that we have. It negates the need to put hands on people sometimes. And obviously when people put hands on people, they get hurt. Offenders get hurt and so forth. So it's a great tool for law enforcement.
You want one working when you do need it.
Yes, sir.
Especially with Chris when you arrested him. So what's it do? Just immobilize people?
It does, right.
It does.
It creates something called neuromuscular incapacitation. Basically, it seizes, it locks up the muscles on the body if the probes hit right. There's
Do you
a,
fall when,
yes, yes.
do you have to touch somebody? Do you have to touch them with the?
No, contrary to what,
Oh, my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, I think.
Please
it's
don't give her
right.
any.
Yeah.
contrary to what's shown on Hollywood and TV,
Yeah,
where they
yeah.
touch and they fall on the ground, flail
Yeah.
like a fish, the darts have to be embedded, which basically locks the muscles up and causes them to, we've always encouraged folks during our training session, try to get up, try to move, try to do certain things. We haven't seen it yet. Not saying that any tool is 100% because we know it's not. But basically, once those darts deploy and they hit the subject, it causes the muscles to lock up and allows the deputies time to get in there and get them handcuffed. And
How long is it before you can come back to and?
instantly,
Oh.
right? It's, and again,
What's
it's
the range of these
Educated on this.
Hollywood seldom benefits law enforcement with the things that it portrays. There's it's called the National Institute for the Prevention of In-Custody Deaths. And basically they talk a lot about excited delirium, people that are going through, and obviously the chairman knows about it, Tim does. Their bodies are going through certain things, their temperature, the body temperature is rising. It's drug induced. And they strongly recommend the use of taser and endorse the use of taser because it allows us to get them under control quickly to where we can provide them medical treatment. So we've had good success with our tasers in Dawson County.
How much just one cost?
Approximately 1,000.
I'll take that order.
It's payback for my leather helmet comment.
It is.
It's not cheap. It's
Ooh.
truly not.
You said I think the other day when I met that no matter if it's you, the taser is deployed against a suspect or not, it has to be fired twice a year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you're using 2 of those cartridges for each taser each year if it doesn't even get used. So
Every officer has to train annually on that. They have to fire the rounds. And then each day they have to test it. They have to squeeze the trigger, let it run for its full 5 seconds. And to give you an example of that, and please don't quote me on this, I want to say a battery is roughly around 150, 60 bucks. They're good for 195 firings and 5-second firings. So each day when a deputy comes on, he has to discharge it and make sure that things operate. And then if it goes into the hands of a night shift personnel, he or she must discharge it. So that's twice a day. So as you can imagine, we run through the batteries pretty quick. But we have to do that. Every time the taser is pulled, it's logged, it's documented how long the taser is, how long it runs for. And obviously in any liability issues, they would be looking and downloading that information. So they are costly, but they're effective. Any other questions I could answer on the taser? We would ask for continuation of the body camera. Major Rowan's not here. He had an appointment this morning. He's kind of heading that up. This has been a lengthy process for us. We did start it last year. Some of the big issues and obstacles that we've had is storage, whether it's server, whether it's cloud or things like that, compatibility issues, making sure that it's working with our in-car cameras, things of that nature. So there's a lot going into it, but we would ask to the board consider continuing that program.
And that 70 is not for the server thing, because I think, is that coming through IT? Because they asked for more server and they mentioned the videos take up a lot of space. So is
Right.
this 70 for everything other than that stuff?
We know, sir, what we've done with what we were allotted in 21, that's figuring into the total cost of everything, not just the camera.
So the text request for extra servers didn't have anything to do with this?
Well, I'm not exactly sure, but I
Okay.
don't think a final decision's been made whether it will go to a cloud or whether we'll pay for the cloud
Yeah.
storage or the server storage.
Okay.
So. The next request we'd have is for the purchase of a SWAT truck. We have, and you can mark through that. We've actually done some more research on that. It's not 377,000 as submitted. We found a very comparable one. And again, this is one of those things where there's very few people in the market that produces these type of vehicles, but the one that we're currently looking at is 263,000. And basically this would allow us as you know, our SWAT team is up and running. It's running strong. We've been able to provide them with a lot of the tools and equipment that they need. But this is one thing we're lacking in. Utilizing a van that's 20-year-old that offers no ballistic protection. We're using an old ambulance that we're able to get off of a government program. Again, no ballistic protection there. We use it primarily for equipment back and forth using hauling equipment. This is something that, and I don't know where the board's at with the remaining SPOS funds, but this is something that we potentially use should those funds come available to use to purchase it as well. But it is a need that we are requesting. Any questions I could answer about it?
Okay.
Patrol laptops, as you can imagine, they take a pretty good beat just back and forth. They are beginning to wear out. They're estimating approximately 4 to 5 years the common life cycle for these. Again, they're not cheap. They're roughly around $3,000 each. And we're looking at replacing, well, total program cost would be $60,000, but the way we're spacing them out, hopefully we can do a few of them this year and then a few in 23 and a few in 24. So what we would be asking for in 2022 is $20,000 to start that program.
That would be for your older vehicles that have had them in them for a while.
Yes, sir.
'Cause you're getting a new one when you get a new car, right?
That's correct. Yes, sir. We have had discussions in the past regarding a range. There's discussions we hope to resume here soon. I know life gets in the way and we've had other things going on. But one thing that we do want to put on the board's radar is range and range equipment. Yeah, not exactly 100% certain that the location's still available. We would like to get that back up and going, but we know that once we identify a location in our county, that we will have to have some targeting system, things of that nature. Ideally, we would be requesting turning targets, reactive targets, things of that nature. The old days of standing on a range and shooting at a cardboard paper, unfortunately, are gone. And courts are even demanding and requiring dynamic movement type shooting, reactionary type shooting, things of that nature, which is a good thing, but it does come with cost.
Sheriff, I know I've talked to you about it, and I've talked to Greg and about it also, and Ray Goody. Could I ask you for them to get with the county manager and Public Works, because I think, we might have a spot down there and to do some in-kind service ourselves with Public Works, if we got a piece of equipment that.
Yes.
I know we walked that spot down there. I walked it with Ray and I walked it with Greg too.
Yeah, absolutely, we would.
That might be a good place to put it, but can they get with the county manager and kind of schedule everybody together?
Most certainly. Yeah, glad to.
Thanks.
Thank you. Active shooter kits, and this is one thing I don't want to confuse the board with bulletproof vest. Active shooter kit, we first implemented this, I believe, in 17. Basically, the bulletproof vest that our men and women are wearing are designed basically to stop a handgun round. And typically what they recommend is whatever you carry, You know, unfortunately, a lot of officers get shot with their own weapon. But what they recommend is that your level of protection meets what you carry. We know that our typical bulletproof vest won't stop a rifle round. So one thing that we implemented in 17 was active shooter kits. Basically, it's rifle rated protection, helmets, as well as chest protection and back protection. We are estimating these to begin expiring in 23. So we would look to start replacing those in the latter part of 22. And again, we're estimating approximately $40,000 for the whole program, but 20 and 22. This is just gear that they keep in their cars. If they go to an active shooter, things of that nature, they can retrieve it quickly, put it on, and offers them a better level of protection. I think I could answer on those.
Question.
Is
And
that
last,
part of riot gear as well? Does riot gear have some of those components?
no, sir. I mean, they do
Separate.
make some riot gear that's ballistic protection too, but it is costly.
Okay.
And then you get into the weight issue too. Riot gear is typically, and I know it can kind of be confusing with so much gear, but riot gear is primarily to get a bottle chunked at you or
Yeah,
stick or
crowd
rock
control
or
type.
something like that. And lastly, this is more of a something down the road as well. It's a roof on our K9 and unit and our kennel. We did replace our K9 building back in it's early this year, actually. The building is manufactured in approximately 2010. So the building's got a little age on it, but the building is in good shape. We are concerned with the roof of it. It's not your typical slanted roof. It's got a slope to it. And we've had some discussions with James Talbert about it as well. We want the thing to last. So with the funds will be available, we did get a quote on it to replace or to put an overlay, not necessarily replace, but to put an overlay on it, as well as potentially resurfacing resurfacing, it's a metal roof on the K9 kennel itself. Again, the total cost on it would be $25,000. And that's all I have.
Questions for the sheriff? All right, sir, thank you. And also thank you for the information you sent out prior to the meeting.
Well, thank you. Please let me know of any questions. And board, again, I just want to publicly thank you again for what you've done for our Leos. We've got to give you an update. We've got a couple that are coming back to us. And so we're in that stage now, just trying to get the word out and things of that nature. But I greatly appreciate what you've done for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, county administration, David. And if you look at David's actually a reduction in his overall budget, but he's got some position talk he's going to talk about, I do believe.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Guess they saved the best for last. Is that what it is? Also, it's lunchtime, so I know y'all are going to go want to get out of here, so we'll be real quick about it. But I did want to, as the chairman said, we did have a small reduction, but I also wanted to kind of recap a little bit for you as Jameson explained to the board regarding the marshal manager, if you will. The board may recall that, there's been discussion with me regarding where that is housed at. Commissioner Gaines mentioned on the stormwater about maybe utilizing public works in conjunction with the stormwater. So those are things that we look at and try to minimize on a regular basis. And as the board knows and has heard in the past, and I know Commissioner Dooley that sat in on a recent interview of ours, we talked about being in a transitional state, coming from a smaller population into now a more aggressive population, in which Jameson mentioned the numbers, and they're pretty impressive. You can see where that growth is. When I gave you the census information the other day, it gives us some numbers, but it didn't go into detail as Jameson did as to when that happened. Do we know whether it was 100 a year or whether it was 1,000 a year, or did it happen 2 years ago, or what that is? So we're seeing this big transition taking place. Those departments that have and have been assigned over the years multiple tasks, you see where placement goes. He also mentioned that in Forsyth, they had, I think the number was 80 planners, everywhere from a planner
Planner
1 to a 2 to whatever. So they're on that bigger scale than where we are. So what we do is we have a tendency to kind of place things where, they may be best suited. And so I say all that just to bring the board's focus back into where the placement is for that position. The discussions in the past have been to move it out from underneath the planning, let planning do what planning does. I know in my previous job in another county, code enforcement, animal control, those positions were outside of the planning department, and the planning department handles what the planning department does. There is, and as we continue to grow, and it may be necessary to maybe bring GIS into its own, own function. That way they can concentrate and focus on that. And as you see, Jameson's being pulled from one end to another when the focus of the department in that position is in planning and zoning. So my request was to the board today to be able to consider moving forward on that, moving that position out from underneath of planning. And as you saw from the revenue standpoint, it supports itself. And that would give that focus, directly on that manager to be able to do that. Now, we did it a while back. I think when it was in probably 2011, somewhere around there, where it was standalone. And matter of fact, I think Sheriff Johnson, he's gone already. He was over that one time, and then it moved back and didn't have any place to put it, so they put it underneath the planning. And so because of the permitting process, the business license, the alcohol license, and all that kind of thing, it all went under there. So anyway, I'd ask the board's consideration on that. The cost on that, really the salary, on that position is about, I think it was $56,000, but when you add in the FICA and everything else on that, it was up about $79,714.75. When you equipped it, it's about another $1,400. So that's kind of where I'm asking again for the board to reconsider that previous request and moving that position, underneath county manager, but underneath its own department.
Does that pull animal control out with it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Code enforcement, animal control, everything under the county marshal's office,
Right.
which I think we're at that point where we need to do that and separate
think so,
planning
too.
and that from that. And that goes back to things we've talked about in the past. And I know you've been involved in this as well, becoming more proactive and less reactive. And that would give, because it's easy for that department, if they stand alone, to have the knowledge of what's out there they need to be looking at. And they drive by some of this stuff every day. All they gotta do is stop.
Mhm.
And so they can be proactive instead of reactive. So I think we are well past the time to do that.
Yeah, and it's, if they're standalone, if they're in like the planning right now, if something comes up, they can grab them, say, go take care of this. And it's not really their job function. If they're standalone,
They're out doing their
they're
job.
out doing their job, and we've got to get on top of our ordinances. I'm not in favor of voting for another ordinance if we can't enforce the ones we got. Right now, we've got a lot of ordinances. I mean, for example, I think Jimmy brought it up the other night, meeting the tire ordinance. We're not enforcing it. I mean, there's places out there that's motored down with tires, but we've got to get a marshal and standalone department where we can go out and enforce those and drive, like Chairman said, drive by and take care of it instead of waiting for somebody to call, and it becomes a bigger problem. But,
It doesn't make sense to have them in planning and development.
no, because like it's
There's no
easy
way
to grab them.
compute that.
It's easy to grab them and say, go look at this for me.
That's right.
Well, like I said.
He
we were
mentioned they
talking
did
about
inspections
Going out doing
sometimes.
inspections
Yeah.
and stuff. So, yeah, I
So
mean,
it's
we
easy
need them to
do.
do their job
That's
and
it.
to be out there looking, out there, and you're right.
And
It's
I'd
that
like to
time.
see them be mandated too. I mean, it's a
Yeah, I
lot
think so.
easier. You go for the judge.
He's recommending that the manager be a
Yeah,
mandated.
If you
That's
go
correct.
for a judge and you write that citation or write that whatever, and you're mandated, the judge takes it a lot, I mean, accepts that a lot easier than having to go over to CID or somebody, get somebody to sign a warrant, or not a warrant, but go on people's property, searching or something. Sometimes the judges don't like it. You're not certified or mandated to write that.
They won't,
They won't accept it.
they won't. I mean, I
So
can tell you, they
then
won't.
you got to run over to the sheriff department and find somebody to help you write that where you put it in.
I think you got a consensus pretty much on that.
I do too. Do you think?
I don't think that was too much difficulty there.
And that's, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was one of the kind of the takeaways that I took from our interview process, is it was very foreign to the candidates that the marshal, that they would be over the marshal.
What?
Yeah, they had several questions about the marshal, so.
Well, I mean, really and truly, I mean, most places probably has, I think Jameson made reference to, marshal is separate, alcohol licensing is actually separate, and then planning is planning.
Yeah.
There's actually three different things that, as we progress over time, that need to be separated out and ran on their own accord and kept up.
Planning's got
And they
more
do.
than they can do anyway, and they don't need this.
And I don't disagree with anything that Jameson and Angela and them reported to you. The location, we've had discussions on it, and just from an operational standpoint, it just makes, to your point, more sense to be out on its own when they can function on their own instead of serving multiple.
Where'd you say logistically they would be located?
Where the old Public Works office was, Angela's already over there. She is in where the plans, where they had the plan room there. Back over in this.
Okay,
Yeah,
where,
I'm sorry.
I went.
No, where
to Fleet.
Brian used to be.
Where are you talking about?
Second
Right,
floor.
it'd be on this floor in the corner by finance.
Oh.
Public Works where David used to be. David
Oh,
would keep.
They
oh,
moved out
okay.
to the new building, and so we have that whole area there that
Oh,
can be
excellent.
utilized for that. And most, to James's point, the tablets and everything, most of those people now are using tablets. They don't even, they go straight to their vehicle, where their vehicle, the county vehicle is parked at. They get in there, they look up all their stuff on the tablets, they go right down and do the inspection. So for the most part, a lot of them are already out in the field
There's
prior to
what?
having to come into the office.
3 cubicle areas over there and 2 offices.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's 3 cubicle areas and 2 offices over there in that complex.
There's an office and
How soon can this be done?
Soon as we authorize.
I'm in favor of it. Yes.
Another thing I'd like to bring your attention that wasn't part of the program, but got to thinking about it and wanted to be able to present it to you just for your consideration as well. And I've just got a handout for you here. And I'll just briefly talk to it just for something
Thank you.
to consider as we move forward. So you can see a couple of numbers that we're talking about here.
PM1.
One of the things that we talked about the other day was how to spend that money. And I had presented my side of where I would like to see some of that go. And of course, the chairman presented his. But what I wanted to do is bring your attention, you've heard a lot about more people, salaries, motivation, how do we motivate people and, those kind of things. And I know, again, I refer back to Commissioner Dooley sitting in with us the other day on our interviews. We talk about environment. We talk about how do we, motivate folks, that kind of things. One of the things that historically has happened in the county, and I know that the chairman and Commissioner Satterfield can attest to this, is that we've always had a merit system or, an evaluation system. And that evaluation system has been put in place without any real compensation attached to it. So if you were an employee that was on the lower side of that evaluation scale, and then you had a high performing employee, both of them got about the same. So there was no encouragement there to really move into, that other than personal, duties or, that of the observation of the manager and then how they would discipline that. But if you look here, back on July the 12th, Vicki and I and Human Resources have been talking about some of the things that the chairman and other commissioners have mentioned about is looking at some kind of a salary adjustment schedule, that kind of thing. And we're still getting that information from other counties to put together from a benefit standpoint and what they're doing on an annual basis. So if you look at that, the average score in 2020 on our annual employee evaluations was a 3.9. The lowest score received was a 2.8 and the highest was a 5. So if you flip over, you'll see a salary information sheet there that really talks about, some of the numbers which we'll come back to. But if you flip to the next page, it talks about how many of those individuals employee wise actually were in the certain categories. And so what we looked at was, what would we be able to do if we were able to set up a percentage based system to where if you were, say you fell into a 3.0 to a 3.9, which if you look at that, the number of employees is 35% of those employees fall into that category, they would be looking at about a 2% increase. And what that would do is help with the compression that we have by not getting anything for that year, so that if in fact we do another salary study down the road, that compression will have shrunk some. So it also benefits and encourages employees to perform at a higher level, because now they know there's a monetary attachment to it. Instead of, well, we get evaluation each year and nothing's going to happen, or, I don't have to perform at that level. So we're looking at something to be able to encourage that. You can see what those costs are if we did it at a 4% or 4.27% increase. And you can see there that on top of the 2% COLA, what those numbers mean to the budget itself. And so then we flip back and we look at what our current budget for salaries is $17 million with all funds. Our current budget for overtime is $471,000, gives us $17,471,000. When you add FICA, retirement and everything, you're looking at about $19,681,000. So if you did the merit 4% average, you'd be looking at about $787,000 with a COLA of 2%. Now, one thing that I'm asking for the board to consider is that we at least put a contingency for the county manager in there. And I know there have been discussions in the past about a contingency fund and how that might be or could have the opportunity for somebody to share in some favoritism, so to speak, that, if you had an individual that, you may be showing more favor, that you could give them more money than anybody else. The contingency fund and all these other funds that you're looking at are fact-based. They have to be approved by the county managers. They have to be approved, and they have to have justification for that. They're just not handed out at a whim, or they're not just handed out. But to Jameson's point, if you recall back, where he was going to the mid-range, is that in the past, we've always gone to minimum. You got 20 years experience. You've worked for other counties, you have local government experience and everything, but when you come, you get the minimum. So they either take a cut and pay, to come here, and we end up with a different, possibly a different employee. So what I'm asking for is that contingency and the approval by the board to be able to say, okay, this individual should, may deserve to go to the mid-range, or have some flexibility there. And that's what Jameson was talking to as well. That will help us bring in a higher quality applicant that wants to come to Dawson County. So,
And if I could just
Yes, sir.
chime in right there for a second. Also go back, also, in my opinion, goes back to all these rate increase requests that you see every year that come before you as a board. Well, we don't deal with those people. I mean, I couldn't tell you whether either one of them is deserving of a rate increase or not, but he does. He does deal with those people. He does deal with their department heads. He does deal with, he could even deal with elected officials who might bring forth a rate increase, and they have to provide documentation. I mean, and a good example is, we've had a department that didn't even sign up. They asked for 5 rate increases, but they didn't sign up to even come to the budget here. So I think it is opportunity for us to put that job on him, which is his job anyway, to make those determinations, not the board, whether somebody should get a rate increase, because I don't know what they're doing. I mean, I don't sit up here every day, and I come by here a lot, but I don't come up here every day. And I have no idea what some of them do outside of this building, but he does. And so, I mean, it's an opportunity for him to manage the way he should manage and to make people accountable the way they should be accountable.
and on that too, we've got, as I mentioned before about transitioning, we do have folks that came to the county and that, and I know some of you have heard from others that said, well, when I came here, I was promised this, and that I would get it if I, spent so much time, or did a good job. And we've not been able to look at those folks and at least be able to bring them along. We've got folks that are doing multiple jobs that never got anything in addition to that. And so I think if there's an avenue to be able to draw from, to be able to support that, maybe not at 100%, but at least be able to support it, I think would go a long way in retainage and keeping that compression down as well. So anyway, that I wanted to bring that to your attention for you to consider if the board would. But the request would be for the marshals to be moved and approved for that manager's position. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for David? I think they're hungry, David.
Okay, that's why I like going last. Yeah.
Been mad night.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. Ladies, thank y'all for all your hard work. Laura, thank you for being with us every second. Appreciate those that have been with us in the building as well as those who have listened to us online. And with that, we are finished and adjourned. Yeah, just adjourned.